What's up, fam? Welcome back to the Steep Stuff Podcast. I'm your host, James Loriello. And today I'm so excited to bring you guys an episode with none other than the legend himself, Mr. Christopher Fisher. Chris was kind enough to come on the podcast to chat. It was fun to have a conversation. This is one that's been overdue for a long time. This is also my longest podcast. We started from top to bottom. We covered as much of Chris's journey and his story as we possibly could. And I was so appreciative that he was candid enough and kind enough to be able to sit down and tell his story. I mean, you guys name it, we covered it. We got into his Colorado's 14ers record, the winter record, his summer attempt. We talked about what he's been up to in the Himalaya, the projects that he was just doing as he was just down in South America, coming back from Chile. What a beautiful area. We talked a lot about Chile and what he's been up to there. We also talked about the double whirl. We talked about Chris's origin story and how he even got into the sport. Talked about growing up and trying to become a Navy SEAL. Just the origin story itself was just so inspiring. Chris is a really inspiring dude. One of those folks that no mountain too high, no sea too rough. Like, this guy just goes and does it. Yeah, I can't sing his praises enough. It's a wild boy, and someone I can't wait to share time with in the mountains with. And hopefully this summer. So, yeah, guys, I hope you enjoy this one. Like I said, it's a personal favorite of mine. This one is almost 3 hours, so buckle up and enjoy it. This is as good and quality and juicy of an episode as you're going to get. One of my favorite ones. So, without further ado, none other than Mr. Christopher Fisher. Enjoy.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are live.
People, Earth, listen up. It is March, guys, and I am so excited that Ultimate Direction is finally unveiling their new vest lineup for 2025. Head on over to ultimatedirection.com to check out the new Race Vest 6-liter and Ultra Vest 12-liter. They're going to be coming at you in two beautiful aesthetic colors, the onyx and green, as well as the white and blue. Guys, I absolutely love these. I've been playing around in these products for months and months now. You might have seen Tara Warren last year running in both the Ultra and Race Vest, as she absolutely smashed it in the Rocky Mountain Slam. Guys, this is a very durable, solid product that I absolutely love. Like I said, the color wheels are beautiful, and this is something I think you're going to be really looking at as you start to put together your race calendars. You're going to need some dependable gear for 2025. So this is definitely something to turn your head toward. Hop on ultimatedirection.com right now. Use code SteepStuffPod for 25% off your cart. Again, like I said, use code SteepStuffPod. Treat yourself to one of these. I think you guys are going to love them. I'd love to hear your feedback. Let me know what you think. Enjoy. Christopher Fisher, welcome to the Steep Stuff Podcast. How are you, man?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, dude, it's a pleasure. I've had so many requests to have you on the podcast. I know you and I have talked a little bit back and forth, trying to figure out, should we do this in person? Should we do it on Zoom? And given the circumstances with a lot of traveling on your end right now, I'm just happy we're able to put this together, man. So really excited to have you on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, glad to be able to talk one way or another. Prefer in person, but obviously we're both in other places all the time, so you know how it goes.
Yeah, man. Part two. We'll do like a fun in-person one. Well, dude, welcome to the pod. Welcome back to the States. I know you just got back from South America. Maybe chat a little bit about that experience and what you were doing out there.
Sure. So originally we went down there to help guide a trip. My good friend and climbing partner, Tyler Andrews, he runs a coaching guiding company. And so they had Ski Camp, Atacama, and that's kind of where it all started. So Aaron and I got invited to be guides on that trip. I guided a dude up Ojos Desolado, which was an incredible experience, and helped some others get up some smaller 6,000s and hit their PRs for altitude. So really, really cool to be able to give back and experience, somebody that I know from climbing that has had Ojos on their list for some time. We actually went over to Aconcagua after that to help guide, and me and my partner didn't make it to the summit. It's a long story short. We had a really short weather window. We flew in with helicopters to try to make it happen within like 2 days or so, and it just didn't happen. But yeah, so that was the start of the trip. And then once we were down there, Aaron and I were like, well, we might as well go see what else we can do. I mean, we have nothing else to do here. So we bounced down to Patagonia and kind of worked our way south to north. We went Puerto Williams, which is on Isla Navarino. It's the furthest most city in the world, depending on who you ask. If you ask Chileans, they're going to say it's the furthermost city. If you ask Argentinians, they're going to say it's Ushuaia. If you ask me, I don't really care, but it's cool. It's like the furthest town. So it was rad. We did a really awesome backcountry 30-mile 50K-ish loop that circled the Dientes de Navarino range. Super epic. I mean, it was like a 30-mile slog through some knee-deep peat moss bogs. Kind of a crazy experience. And so, yeah, I don't know how deep you want me to go into the, Patagonia stuff,
Talk
but
about it. Go for it. Yeah.
We just kind of bounced all over. So we spent a week in Puerto Williams, and after we did our objective there, we took a boat over to Ushuaia, just across I think it's the Beagle Channel. So over in Ushuaia, we spent a couple weeks running around the mountains there. Beautiful place. The wind can kind of pick up, and it gets pretty chilly because it's, the furthest southmost point of the world besides Antarctica. So weather's kind of unpredictable, but incredibly beautiful place. And the mountains are epic. You get big vert gain even from sea level. So starting at sea level, you can run up to near 6,000 feet.
Oh, wow.
And it's pretty rad. I mean, there's definitely more things I want to do there. There's so many mountains, and they're honestly epic. And being at sea level is pretty cool. So it's a lot easier to move around at sea level than it is at altitude. So it's fun to be able to go further, go harder, and just go faster overall. I chased a couple different FKTs throughout the whole travel experience. So the first one, I guess, was Dientes de Navarino. That was an FKT unsupported. They do host a race on the course. It was 2 weeks prior to us getting there. We had no idea it was a thing. So, oh well, maybe next year. But yeah, we spent a couple weeks in Ushuaia, and then we bounced north to El Chatan. We spent 2 weeks in El Chatan, and the weather there is even more unpredictable. So we had, I don't know, maybe a handful of those 2 weeks were decent days, and 2 really good days to where we could actually get out and do longer things. And so it was incredible to go look at the massives of the Fitzroy and the Cerro Torre ranges. I mean, those things are just giant granite peaks. It's insane. So it was really cool place. And Aaron and I did the Humel circuit together, which is about a 43-mile backcountry route through I guess that area. I don't know what exactly it's called, the El Chatan Patagonia area. It pretty much goes from El Chatan and goes all the way back to the ice field, which is the second largest ice field in the world. Wow. Southern Patagonia ice field. Insane. I mean, it's just ice and mountains for as far as you can see. And seeing some of the glaciers in the Himalaya and all that kind of stuff, it's insane too. But this was just a different level. I mean,
really,
it's just massive. It's great. I don't even know how to explain it, honestly, besides showing pictures. It's insane. So if anybody has the chance to go down there and check it out, you definitely should. It's really cool, and it's just spectacular. And there's some things I want to do out there as far as traversing out on skis and skiing some peaks. So it added a few different projects to my list for the future. But anyways, that 43-mile loop, that was great. Aaron and I did that together as a unsupported mixed gender FKT. We broke the mixed gender FKT by 2.5 hours or something like that. And then we took down the women's time by maybe 10 minutes. I forget exactly, but something like that. So that was cool. And it's a route that I'd like to go back for and attempt the men's side on in the future, and as well as the La Abuela Yellow. I don't know how to pronounce it,
I mean,
but
dude,
there's
your
another
Spanish is not bad. It's pretty good.
un poquito español. Yeah, I have a few words here and there. I picked up a lot more words. I can't speak fluently, but I can kind of get my point across, so that's cool.
Nice, man.
Long story short, El Chaton's incredible, but the weather is so sparse. So, like, it's hard to do a lot of big things, and you have to be in the area to really, nail a weather day if it comes. And so, yeah, in the future, I mean, there's things that I'd like to do there as far as bigger routes, big ski missions, and even climbing some of the Titans. I mean, I would like to get to the point where I can go climb like Fitzroy and Cerro Torre. I mean, that shit is just insane, and it's very inspiring to see others do it, and it just adds in a whole other element to moving to the mountains. So it's definitely got my mind spinning. Really rad. But that wasn't the last stop in Patagonia. We went up to Bariloche, another amazing place. If you've never been to Bariloche, it is, from what I understand, the mecca of trail running in South America and Argentina.
Really? Shit.
They have trails all over the place, tons of mountains, and they have massive lakes, lagunas. They have lakes everywhere, beaches, and I mean, it's like being like Breckenridge or like Summit County, but way prettier in my opinion.
Okay.
And a lot more lakes, and maybe not as many mountains, just because Colorado has so many mountains, but there's a lot to do. It's like a resort town. It's like your typical ski town. It's the biggest they have the biggest ski resort in South America, which is rad. So skiing, mountain running, swimming, boating. It's like you can kind of do everything there and probably never get bored. So it's a place that I'll be spending a lot more time in the future. And yeah, just stoked to have been able to go to Patagonia. The one big route that I did while I was down in Bariloche was the Cuatro Refugio. So like their classic backcountry route connects 4 refugios throughout the backcountry. It's like it's like a marathon pretty much, with 13-ish thousand feet of climbing. And I kind of just did that for a nice long day in the mountains by myself. And it was some pretty brutal terrain, honestly. Like I was expecting, they have a race on this course, right? So I was expecting to be like fairly runnable for the most part,
yeah. But
it's not. And so like the course record is, I think, 6:23 by some dude from Spain, Saga, I think his name is.
Okay. That's just pretty slow for a marathon distance. Yeah, I mean, that's
with 13,000 feet on some brutal terrain. And so I was like, before I ran the route, I was like, oh yeah, I mean, maybe I'll stay a little longer to run the race, because it was 2 weeks after we were planning on leaving. It's actually in like 2 days. And so I was like, oh, maybe I'll just stick around and run it and try to go for the course record. And then I went out and did it for fun. I was like, well, course record's pretty stout. And I didn't push it by any means. I think I did it like right under 9 hours, kind of going pretty easy. And like, maybe I could get close to it if I really, really tried, but it's a brutal course. It's not like your just typical trail run. It's a full-on mountain, like body thrashing course. So really cool, and something I want to do in the future. Yeah, I don't know. Patagonia just kind of opened up, the trip to Patagonia opened up so many doors of possibilities of what can be done down there in the mountains. And there's just endless amounts of exploration to be done. As far as doing the things that I like to do.
Yeah. Do you think do you think that's where you'll start spending more winters, if you will? Like instead of doing Colorado winters, you think you'll start spending more time down there?
It's hard to say. God, I love skiing so much. That's like the main reason why I moved to Colorado. And then obviously life's changed in this direction of where like I'm a paid mountain runner. That's kind of like more so my direction as right now. But like skiing has been my favorite sport ever, and it always will be. It's just like skiing powder. There's nothing like it. So it's hard to say. Like as much as I want to go ski powder, exploring Patagonia and other places in the world is equally as satisfying, almost kind of, So it's like it's a hard trade-off. Like I know there will probably, at least in my lifetime, be snow in Colorado to go ski and other places, but I don't know how long I'll be able to keep up this like being able to travel and do big things in big places. So it's hard to balance. So yeah, I mean, absolutely right. There's a trade-off, and it's hard to figure out what's more important. Yeah, they both are.
It's like, all right, well, how do I? And then you might as well just start, continuing to mix skiing in with the project, so that way you can,
right.
It makes it easier.
Yeah, that's kind of how the winter 14ers went. It was half mostly skiing with some slogging, obviously, but yeah, like I would love to get to the point to where I could go and do these big projects with skiing and like add in these multi-sport faceted like projects. I mean, I have so many ideas for these things, and
Yeah.
I think the one thing that's kind of holding back is being like more enabled by financials and brands. And maybe that's just me saying I need to go get an actual job, but
Let's tell these brands to pay more, dude. There you go.
that's kind of the point. I'm trying to get to that point, and conversations have started, so we'll see.
I like to hear it, man. All right, let's track this from the beginning a little bit, because I mean, I think for the audience listening, we know so much about the endeavors that you have done, and we'll dive into those. But I'm so interested to hear about like what was your formative years like growing up? What got you into these adventures? Because I understand you grew up in Texas. Like what got you stoked about the mountains originally? And I also do want to talk about the Navy and that path of your life as well.
Of course. So growing up in Texas, man, I've always been an athlete, playing football, running track, cross country, baseball, kind of all your traditional sports. So background in pretty much any sport you think of besides basketball. Not very good at basketball. Never have been, never will be. And so, yeah, it's a weird place. So I was fortunate enough to grow up in a family where my uncle has lived in Breckenridge for as long as I can remember, as long as I've been alive at a minimum. And so we grew up going out to ski like once every year, maybe twice a year, depending on. And immediately after I started skiing at a young age, maybe like 3 or 4, I just loved it. So I always had this thing in the back of my mind of when will I get to the mountains and how will I get there? And I'll finish that story up when we talk about the Navy stuff, because that's kind of where it translates. But yeah, I was an athlete my entire life, playing football growing up and running cross country. And I was pretty fast back in the day, way faster than I am now, actually. Like I was running upper 15-minute 5Ks as a freshman in high school, and breaking 5 minutes of the mile as a freshman in high school, which nowadays, I mean, it's not that quick, but it's still kind of fast, right? But like I can't do that right now. And after high school, I had a few offers to go play ball at a couple small like D3 schools and NAIA stuff, and I never really took up on it. I feel like I kind of got cheated out of my football opportunities, mainly because of my own fault. So I grew up as a stoner. I smoked pot growing up, and I failed a drug test my senior year of high school. And towards the end of my season of my senior year football season, and I was on the way to potentially being like all-state middle linebacker and like make these stats. And I had colleges talking to me and these things. When that happened, I kind of got singled out by my team and by the school for whatever reasons. It doesn't really matter. And that kind of just shut all that down and kind of shut down my ambition to keep chasing the sport dream. So for a while there, I was kind of lost and stuck in this, what do I do now? Because I had this vision growing up that I was always going to be an athlete. And like, I didn't really know what the direction I was going to go after this was. And so, being pretty good, I'm not sitting here trying to brag, but like being pretty good at sports and like, having that rug that's kind of ripped out from under you, it just kind of puts you in a place where, okay, well, where do I go now? And so, yeah, I was, that's really how my childhood went. Besides, at least as the sports side, I grew up in a great family. I can't complain. Your classic traditional family, down in South Texas, and parents are great. My parents showed up to every sporting event I could ever imagine. So like the support has always been there, whether it was like T-ball or my senior year football and track meets, like they were always there. So like having support was huge growing up. But yeah, getting the rug pulled out, it really changes a person. And so I pretty much just stopped. Like after that happened, maybe October of my senior year of high school, I was like, okay, well, I guess sports are off the table, and kind of just walked away from that whole lifestyle for 5 or 6 years, something like that.
Wow. So at what point then, so coming out of high school then, did you go straight to the Navy?
No, I actually went to college. I started at Berlin Community College down in College Station, which is like the funnel school for Texas A&M.
Yeah.
And at the time, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was just going to school because that's all I knew to do, and that's what everybody says to do, and that's the traditional way. And it's like my parents
Right.
like, oh, this is the best thing for you. And so I'm like, in the back of my mind, I knew I probably shouldn't have gone. I probably should have just picked something else and gone a different direction from the start. And honestly, I wasted a lot of time. I didn't finish with a degree. I don't have a degree now. I ended up dropping out of school, maybe year 3. Around the middle of that time, I actually revisited one of my old NAIA contracts for football and was able to get on the team like year 3 of college. And so I went over to Missouri to play ball for a semester and ended up breaking my ankle like a month into practice. So that was another rug. Just like, okay, that's over. Shortly after that is when I decided to go to the Navy. I was kind of like in this place of no direction, not knowing like what I wanted to do in life or where I wanted to go. Kind of really just getting caught up in the wrong crowd, partying and experimenting with things, and just not being
Just being a wild boy.
all I could, being really wild, and honestly just like living a life with no purpose. No direction, no purpose. It was just a waste of time and space is what I look at it as. At one point, I was sitting at my grandparents' lake house partying, and this guy that was there was talking about how he was about to enter the Navy. And I was like, oh, interesting. And, I'm at a point where I'm like, I have nothing going for me. I don't even know if I was working a job, honestly. And so I started picking his brain, and I was like, so what's the Navy like? And like, what are these things? And like, what are the opportunities? And he started talking about Navy SEAL stuff. And I was like, oh, that actually sounds pretty interesting. And he kind of ran through like what the criteria was for that and like how to get into that kind of scene. And immediately it sparked my interest. And like literally the next day I called my dad and I was like, hey man, I want to be a Navy SEAL. And he was like, oh yeah, really? Like, what have you been doing for the past few years to get ready for that? And long story short, so my parents grew up doing Young Life, which is like a non-denominational youth ministry group for churches and stuff. And one of the kids that he was a leader for ended up being a SEAL, and they were really good friends. And so he had this contact who was a SEAL, and he called him the next day and like got me into this training program, and like immediately had mentors behind my back, like teaching me and showing me the ways of, how to train properly and like the mindset and all this kind of stuff. And it started moving really fast, right? I don't know, maybe you have some other questions you want to ask around it, but that was really the transition, was just being lost and not having any direction, and then just bam, spark. And I was like, oh, well, okay, training for Navy SEALs, I mean, you have to be an athlete. Like you can show up as regular Joe Schmo and make it happen, but like typically the people that are doing this stuff are athletes. And I was like, okay, well, this is a way for me to re-spark my like athletic dream of, using my body as my job essentially. And yeah, it kind of just took off from there.
I'm so curious to see like, well, we can talk about buds after, but like, and like getting into the buds process. But like, was it easy for you to just be able to like, at that point in time in the world and like in the military, just be able to get like a SEAL contract to like go to buds? Or did you have to like how were you able to just go to a recruiter and they were able to like get you in on that? Or how did that work?
Yeah. So you have to earn a contract, and to do that, you take a PST. It's like a physical strength test. I honestly forget all the terminology. It's called a PST, and pretty much it's a test of, was it running or swimming? You have to swim a certain amount of laps, do a certain amount of push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, and then do like a 1.5 mile run. I forget the distance of the swim. It was maybe like 500 meters or something. I forget. And so you get scored on like your results of these things. And long story short, I started training for that PST, and after about 6 months, I passed it with high enough scores and got a contract my first try.
Wow, that's amazing.
Which is pretty cool. And they weren't really just handing it out. Like I joined this group over in Lubbock, because I was in Lubbock at the time, going to Texas Tech. Well, dropped out at Texas Tech, and long story short, I was just training there with another guy that was doing the same thing. And yeah, not everybody got contracts. I mean, there's a lot of guys that were working really hard to try to get to that point and like, get to where they can run fast enough, swim fast enough, do enough push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups. And for whatever reason, I was able to do it first try around, which I don't know. They weren't really handing them out like candy, but like, it's not a super hard test by any means. Like anybody that's willing to go train for it could probably pull it off at some point.
So
So,
so
yeah.
you start buds, then you deploy, or you start buds, and you're going through the buds process. Dude, I am so curious to see, like, is that just a kick in the dick? Like, is it horrible? Like what was your take on like getting to Hell Week at least? Like, is it like
Sure.
so impossibly hard?
Yeah, it's interesting. Buds is so you have 8 weeks of boot camp, and then you have 8 weeks of pre-buds, and then you go out there, and then you have like 4 weeks or something of that of like another pre-buds type of thing, and they kind of teach you like what bud is going to be like, and then you go to buds. So like there's this whole like 5-6 month process of just getting to buds, and throughout that process, you still have to pass these PSTs and like keep on doing these tests and training, and you have to keep making it. So like by the time you get there, the class dwindles quite a bit. But no, buds is hard. I mean, it's the real deal. I've heard things through the grapevine that it's been made easier. Um, we could talk about this for a long time, and maybe that's a different conversation. But um, we were at a time where it was like very popular to try to become a SEAL, and so I think from what I understand, they were like making it harder because of how many people were coming. But regardless, yeah, it's a kick in the dick. I mean, it was hard. I was maybe 23 when I was going through buds, maybe 22. I forget exactly. And yeah, I mean, physically, if I'm being honest, I had nothing wrong with me physically. Like, there's a lot of guys that get stress fractures and like the body gets torn up and all these things. And I never had any issues with anything. I don't know if that's just like me being special and just having like a resilient body to
Durable.
hard things.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a mental game. So that's what ended up breaking me. And like getting into Hell Week it was hard. I mean, it's hard to like look back at it because I feel like I've done so many things since then that are probably harder than what I was doing at Buds and at Hell Week.
Yeah.
And I feel like if I were to go back now with like the mindset that I have now and like my strength and physicality, I could probably pull it off, but it's not something that I want to do. So that's why I wouldn't be able to pull it off, if that makes sense.
Yeah. 100%.
But no, it's 100% mental, 100% physical, and it's hard. I mean, there's a lot that goes on, like surf torture. That shit is not fun. Laying in the cold and just getting smacked by waves. And I mean, you got guys getting hyperthermic next to you. They pull them out, warm them up, and you go back in the water. It's like, the water stuff is actually probably the easiest for me. It's like the drown proofing, all those like drills and techniques. I never had any issues with any of that kind of stuff. The main thing that really got to do is running boats. So the boats I'm sure everybody's heard of David Goggins, who's going to carry the boats and all that shit.
Yeah.
Surf
torture.
It's hard.
Or whatever.
Yeah, surf torture. That's a good one. But yeah, I mean, surf torture is pretty easy when you're looking at everything else. I mean, running with boats on your head really sucks. It's just doesn't feel good and it hurts a lot. And it's just really hard. And so when I got to Hell Week, finally, I was put in a boat crew, and for whatever reason, my boat crew is just not great. And was it 7 people to a crew? 7, yep. And within 24 hours, I believe 5 out of 7 of us dropped. So like, I kind of just followed the leader and ended up pulling out as well because I was so mentally drained from my team, like sucking boat and not pulling their weight and all these things. And, that's just me coping out with an excuse of just not having the mentality to pull it off. But God, yeah, I mean, if you have any specific questions about it that you want to know about, let me know.
No, I will one day. I mean, I just, dude, like I grew up. So I was in a similar position where like I went to college. I finished college, but hated it. Right. I was a terrible student. And I like had that idea in the back of my mind for such a long time of like wanting to pursue. Obviously now I'm old, so, and it doesn't excite me like it did before. But at one point in time in my life, I really considered pursuing it, which is why I'm so curious. And like we all watch, like I've watched that YouTube video, the Buds class 234 or something like that, a gazillion times, dude. Yeah. So I don't know. It's just interesting to me. But yeah, it's an incredible story, man. Like it's just, I don't know. And it's so cool to see where like going through that process and then not finishing it and then to the heights that you've risen to since then. It's just really interesting. It's a cool dichotomy.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. All right. So,
yeah, that was also the changing point for my entire life as well. Like the second changing point. Maybe that's what you were about to ask.
Yeah,
I
I
didn't
know.
mean to
I
interrupt
was
you.
just gonna pivot there, but if you want to take it from there, you're welcome to. But as far as like what the lessons you learned, like a lesson you took away from that, and how it like catapulted you into some of the new heights that you've taken your career to.
Yeah, sure. So at first, after quitting, I honestly couldn't believe that I was back to this point of no direction, having no idea where I wanted to do, what I wanted to go in life. And I was like, man, this really kind of sucks. Like, I'm back in the same position that I was just a handful of months ago. And it took me some time to realize that I actually wasn't. That wasn't the reality. I wasn't in the same position. I was actually still on, like, a decent trajectory of trying to become somebody. And maybe that just wasn't going to be a SEAL. And it obviously wasn't, right? So after some time and some reflection, I realized that I can pretty much do whatever I want in this world as long as I put the, energy into doing it. And that's the biggest lesson that I learned from quitting in buds. I can go and be whoever I want. I can go and do whatever I want, whether it's good or it's bad. I can go do whatever I want in this world. And, all I have to do is put the steps together to make it happen to get to that point of whatever it is, right? So after getting out of the Navy, I was like, okay, well, what do I want to do? I want to go to Colorado and ski. And I got home, packed up my bags, got a loan on a truck, and just drove out to Colorado. My parents were like, I think you should probably get a job and like maybe think about this a little more. And I was like, no, I'm not going to live in Texas. This is not a place that inspires me, doesn't motivate me. There's nothing here for me. I got to go. And I just packed all my stuff up and moved to Colorado in hopes of just being a ski bum, honestly, and figuring it out from there. And it's worked out so well that, I mean, I honestly can't even believe it hardly. It's like going from literally doing nothing with my life to now chasing these big endeavors and like trying to break world records, push human limits, and hopefully inspire others. It's pretty cool. And it's been an amazing journey, to say the least. It's like you have these backboard effects of everything you do. And for me, fortunately, quitting buds had this incredible story that I would have never imagined had I, been told, hey, if you quit right now, this is what's going to happen. I always hear, like, when I was in the Navy, I always hear the stories of the guys that do quit buds. Like, they end up, most of them end up becoming like nothing. It breaks them down so hard that they weren't able to achieve what they wanted to. And it turns you into a different person to where you're like, okay, well, I'm not that great. So now I'm going to live a life that's not as great as I wanted it to be. And for me, that was just not the case. I was like, I need more.
I love it, dude. No, and you know what, dude? It's amazing to hear you say that, and because you do hear not horror stories, but just really bummer stories of like people just don't fulfill the lives that they want to. Right? They either go
Right.
back to a ship or something like that, especially if they're still in the Navy, or they go out and become. They just don't. Let's say, I guess I don't want to poo-poo on anybody, but like they just go do what they didn't want to do in life, which is sad to see, man.
Right.
Let's talk about your story. So now that you're out of buds, or now that you left buds, you're out of the Navy and you're doing your thing. I want to fast forward a few years, and I want to kind of bridge this gap between that guy who moved out to Colorado to ski and that guy that went and knocked down all the 14ers in the winter and set the winter 14ers record. You first popped onto the scene for me when it was kind of this Cirque Series Vert Max challenge where you were trying to set the world record for the most vertical feet climbed. It was in a month, right? It's something like that. It was a most vertical.
Right.
Talk about that, because it's just like so interesting to me how the Cirque Series, which is such a special racing series, is so like keen to the core of your story.
Sure. Yeah. After that whole thing probably popped up maybe year 2 of me living in Colorado. I was living in Breckenridge and I just randomly happened to see on Instagram scrolling or something that, hey, there's this challenge for MaxVert October. And I was like, oh, cool. Let's try it out and see what happens. So year 1, I just went in and tried it out. After about 2 weeks, I realized that there was no way I was going to win this thing. Like, whoever was actually winning that year was like way far ahead. And I was like, man, these numbers that these people are putting up are crazy. Like, I couldn't imagine someone doing 10,000 plus feet of vert every single day. I was like, there's just no way that's real that people are doing this. And so, long story short, I ended up with like 250,000 feet my first year of doing it. And it wasn't enough. So like the last 6 days of that, to get to that 250, I had to do, I think it was 17,000 feet a day to get to 250. So 17 times 6, whatever that is, like almost 100K.
Okay. I was gonna say we don't do public math on this podcast. No.
Yep. Yeah, almost like 100K in 6 days or something like that. And I was like, okay, well, let's try it out. And so it happened. I was like, okay, well, that's cool. And I got to my goal. I think I was like 5th overall or something. And I didn't win it. Not that I was really going in it with the mindset of winning, but I'm a competitive person. And so I was like, well, I think I could do more. And the next year came around. And actually, that's kind of what started everything. So I met Julian through the first year, and we kind of became friends. And he came out for my 25th. It was my 25th birthday. I did 25,000 feet on Mount Morrison there in what is that? In Morrison.
Yeah.
And he came out to kind of like, be a part of it, celebrate for a lap or whatever. And that's where I met Julian and got connected to the Cirque Series. And so I started running the races that next summer. And at some point, at like maybe a month prior to the MaxVert happening, he was like, hey, man, are you going to do MaxVert again? And I was like, well, I don't know. I never really thought about it, but maybe I will. And then like a day later, like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And so I quit my job, just kind of stepped away. I was like, hey, guys, I got to go chase this thing to see, what could happen and what could come out of this. And that's what I did. I quit my full-time job where I was working at Breckenridge, packed up my bags, and pretty much spent the entire month over in Salt Lake City, going up and down, doing laps on Grandeur Peak. And it was an incredible experience. And it's like, for me right now, it's hard to fathom that I even did that. I mean, it was so much vert. I think I averaged like 13,300 feet a day.
That's crazy,
over 31 days. And the last 9 of those days were 18,000 feet every day. So like, it was insane. And like, I kind of did it off the couch. I literally didn't train for it. I kind of was like, okay, well, yeah, I had a bummed ankle all summer. And so I was nursing that all summer and just literally got up off the couch, went and tried this thing. And first 3 days in a row, I was doing 15K a day, and my knees were just absolutely trashed after those 3 days. And so I messaged my family and like Julia and other people, and they're like, well, you could always do it next year. And I was like, that kind of hit home, because when I heard that from everybody, it kind of reminded me of Buds and like quitting at Buds. I'm like, man, I'm really just going to like throw in the towel again about something ridiculous that I could probably push through. And that was the mindset. It was, okay, maybe I am in pain. This is probably going to hurt a lot. But what happened in the past with Buds when I was in pain and hurt a lot, and then the next day I was fine, it's like, that'll probably just happen again. And so, being able to use that lesson and put it into the MaxVert was really what got me through. I mean, I just thought every day about how hard it was going to be to do this, but also about how hard it was to go and quit something that I really, really wanted to do, or at least that I thought I really wanted to do. Right. And so that's what motivated me and drove me to finishing the MaxVert. That's really what put my name on the map. I did 400,000 feet. Yeah, it did. It seriously did. I shortly after that was hooked up with Rab and signed a contract with them. And I've been with them for, this is my 4th year now, I believe, something like that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it seriously changed my life. It was an incredible month, and it was incredibly hard. There's no way I could have done it by myself. I mean, I had my teammate, Tyler Balovic, who was out there every single day grinding laps away on Grandeur as well. And many others who were competing in the competition out there grinding away. And so it was just like this huge community of people coming together to support each other, but also support me in trying to break this, big record that Noah set the year before at 300 and maybe 30,000 feet, something like that. So yeah, I put 70,000 feet on this record, and it was epic. I mean, I still can't believe that I did that for 31 days.
So crazy. And the thing that's wild about it too is like, it's not like you had an incline. Like the Manitou incline is so easy to do something like that on, right? Like,
right.
Speaking, because it's less mileage. It's just up and down. Whereas like with Grandeur, I feel like there's a good degree of like, yes, it's super steep, but you got to put a shit ton of miles in too to be able to run up and down or hike up and down this thing back and forth,
sure.
back and forth. So it almost like from an efficiency perspective, like it's got to take, should have taken like way more time to do it the way you did it with Grandeur.
It's funny you say that, because I actually did go to the incline for 2 days during that month. And on Grandeur, I was doing mostly like half laps. So I was doing like the steepest sections over and over, and I mean, I did hundreds of laps on them probably, and it's like to the point where I know every footstep, and I was able to do. I mean, I think the fastest I did anything, I think it was like 19K in 6.5 hours, up and
Wow.
down, something ridiculous like that. I mean, I don't think I could do that right now, honestly. And I went over. We had bad weather days for whatever reason because of the weather, and I went over. I flew from Salt Lake to Denver so I could get out of the weather for 3 days, so I could keep my streak thing going and keep the momentum rolling. And I went down to the Manitou, and I did day one on that thing. I did, I think it was 8 laps, and I
Which is
was
crazy.
smoked, dude.
It's hard,
First time
dude.
ever. It's hard. First time
Yeah.
ever doing the incline. I did 8 laps, and it was like I was like, "There's no way I'm going to be doing this shit for like another week. I'm going back to Salt Lake." So, it just wasn't. It was honestly slower and harder on my body to do it on the incline, which is crazy. I mean, I honestly, if you're there doing that all day, every day, or that's like your training ground, it's probably not the case. You probably get used to the impact of the load. It wasn't for me though. It's like I knew Grandeur so well. I was like, I need to get back to my stomping grounds, you know?
Yeah, that's so interesting to me, dude. Like I'm on the incline, especially during this part of the season where it's more fitness and building speed stuff. I'll probably only hit the incline like once a week, but I don't usually go the whole way. I'll only go to the first bailout and do a lot of repeats on it, like enough to where, because it's not the steeps, right? Where it's a
Sure.
completely different type of like modality, if you will. But dude, it's crazy. Like even if I take a week in between efforts, like I am smoked after that effort, like in some serious, like it's carnage, which is interesting. I don't know what it is about the incline, but it hurts. It's not fun.
It's legit. I mean, yeah, it hurts. Even when Erin did her inclinathon, I was like, Jesus. you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it's real deal. Like after doing 8 laps, I think I told myself I never want to do that again. So like me doing the inclinathon is probably not gonna happen.
Oh man. So dude,
Hey James,
yeah.
can I can we pause for 30 seconds?
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
just realized my phone's about to die, and I'm gonna
Yeah,
go
yeah.
grab a cord so it doesn't die.
Yeah, take your time. That's fine.
I hate to do that.
No,
Hopefully
dude,
it's
you're
not
good.
too hard to edit that out.
No, it's super easy. Not a big deal. All good.
Okay, cool. I'll be right back. Sorry about that.
No, you're good.
Dude, I hate to do that. I had like 50% when I started this, and it's now already down to 9. So
Oh, good dude. Zoom will do that to it'll rip that phone right down. It's no joke.
sure will. Cool. I'm back. We were
Okay.
talking about incline.
Incline, yes. All right, so I was gonna pivot. I'll pivot from the incline, and move to. Okay, so after you finish the MaxVert, this is the question that I have. You go from that, changes your life. You get this big contract with Rab, and now you're a sponsored athlete. At what point in time are you like starting to shift your focus then to like, okay, I'm going to start going after some big objectives there? Like, are you immediately starting to think about the Colorado 14ers and objectives like that? Or like, what was that process like in there?
Sure. You know, I had these like dreams and aspirations to do things like Nolan's. And when I first moved to Colorado and started climbing the 14ers, Nolan's was one of the first things that popped to my radar. And I was like, oh, this is really rad. And maybe one day, it's like a life project. Maybe one day I'll be able to do this. And that kind of just sped everything up for me. You know, I still haven't done Nolan's, but it started putting like thoughts in my mind that I could actually do these big mountain projects if I just like put the effort forth and tried. You know, whether I fail or not, it's like putting the effort into it is what matters. And so, you know, that next, really all I did was ski that upcoming winter, but that next summer I started kind of hitting it hard again. And I attempted a route called Mosquito 10 Mile Traverse
Yep.
over in a Mosquito 10 miles, which is like, it was 40 miles. It's the highest, longest ridge line in North America outside of Alaska. So the first 30-ish miles are all above 13,000 feet. It tags, I think, 29 mountains, 13ers, a couple 14ers, and a couple 12ers. Super epic route, right? So like I started piecing together this big alpine route on the ridge and thought it was super sick. And long story short, I ended up failing around, well, failing maybe the wrong word, but I ended up having to pull away from the record attempt or even just the route attempt about 3/4 of the way through on peak 10 in Breckenridge. Um, for one, I was mega bonked. This was like the first like real ultra thing that I've tried outside of MaxVert, a couple of the like big mountain runs and things. And so this is like the first real thing I've tried. And I was not putting in the proper calories. And like by halfway point, I just couldn't eat anymore. And so like I had gone maybe 12 hours without eating
Jesus Christ,
anything.
Especially above a tree line.
Yeah.
That's brutal, dude.
It was hard. And like where it really hit me was the section from Wheeler, well, even before Wheeler, but Wheeler to peak 10, it's a lot of scrambly stuff, class 3, 4, and even some 5th, where like if you fall, like you'll be lucky if you live. And I'm like, I remember being so out of it, like bonked, where I was like missing my handholds and like close to falling to my death. And I was like, okay, this is not okay. And so safely get off of all the hard stuff and just like crawl to peak 10. And I had somebody telling me about the weather, and there was no way I was going to make it to the finish with the weather coming in. Like, okay, say there was a really perfect day, maybe I could have finished it and just crawled it in, but there were storms coming, and it was going to happen whether I wanted them to or not. So I actually had my uncle come up to peak 10, pick me up off the mountain, and bring me down. And about an hour later, there was this massive thunderstorm that lasted for like an hour and a half, just ground strikes all across the rest of the 10 mile where I would have been. And I was like, okay, yeah. I mean, I would have probably died had I stayed up there. Like, it was pretty legit. And, it was just a huge lesson learned, right? So, like, that was my first kind of step into, hey, let's try a big project. And shortly after that, Jason Hardrath, who you just talked to again recently, shout out to the homie, good dude. He reached out to me, or did I reach out to him? We reached out to each other. And we're like, hey, he was like, hey man, I have this crazy idea. And I was like, oh yeah, me too. And for whatever reason, we both had like looked at the whirl and had the idea of doing an out and back on it because nobody had ever done it. And so he definitely reached out to me about it. He reached out and I was like, dude, I was literally already thinking this. Maybe we should do it together. And so we got together, having never met each other besides through some Instagram messages. And they're like, hey, yeah, let's do the out and back on the world. Let's just go send it and see what happens. And this was another off the couch send for me, because after the Mosquito 10 mile, this is maybe a month and a half later, I was pretty wrecked. So I ended up taking some downtime, whatever. And we get to the Salt Lake to do the whirl. And it was epic. It was legit. He had just gotten off of doing Norman's 13, I think it is what it's called. Yeah. Something ridiculous out there. And the Cali 14er record, like self-supported on bike. A mega project, like 2 weeks prior. So he was pretty wrecked. I was not nearly as wrecked as him. And we went out to do this big thing together. And he made it one whole whirl with me. We did a whirl, shared an epic adventure. And by the end of it, he was so trash. I mean, his feet had it was just like his foot was a tire blister. And I was also trash, but in a different way. And he was like, hey, man, you got to go do this by yourself. You got to turn around and send it one more time. And I was like, oh, shit, you're right. I do. And so it was this weird moment of like, I got down expecting like, okay, we'll take an hour and a half nap. We'll turn around together. The first roll took us 32 hours, something ridiculous. I mean, I could probably do it in less than 20 right now if I wanted to. That's besides the point. And I remember waking up from my hour and a half nap that got cut into 30 minutes because of weather coming in 2 days or something like that. And Joe, who was like crew leader, was like, hey, man, are you ready to go back? And I was like, yeah, I mean, I got nothing else to do today. This is literally the only thing I had planned for the day. So I might as well at least start walking back up the mountain. And I ended up pulling off the double whirl. First person to do it. It took me like 66 hours of pretty much not sleeping at all. It was super epic. And so that was kind of like, double whirl was like really what brought me into doing these big epic things after the 400K thing. So that was like the first like real ultra like mega project experience I'd ever had. And that's what really started like putting things on my map. I'm like, okay, this is cool. Like these grand epic adventures are insane. And it's like for me, it's the human experience. You get to go and do these grand adventures and go on these grand epics, and it's just the human experience. You get to feel every emotion on the wheel of what it is to be a human. You get to feel all the pain, all the suffering, and you get to do it all in a short amount of time. So it's like living multiple lifetimes in such a short amount of time and being able to do it over and over again is like, I don't know. It's like the craziest thing you could ever think of. It's like most people get to live that once, and that's their one human life, right?
Yeah,
It's like,
right. And you
and
do
there's
it
nothing wrong with that.
over and over and over. No, there's nothing wrong with it, but like, dude, that's the spice of life, man. Like,
Right.
I talk about this a lot on the podcast. Is like, and not like I said, the intention is not to poo poo on anybody, but like, for instance, dude, like you live this. Jason and I were joking about this because like you just got back from South America, like you live in a life that people would be very jealous to have. And I work in corporate finance and accounting, and like I live this like weird double life where like sometimes I'm out doing these amazing adventures and training for these amazing races, and then the other half of me is stuck in an office or whatever and like looking at spreadsheets. And it's like, dude, I think about this a lot where like the people that I work with sometimes, it's like, man, like you will never understand what it's like to like chase like for instance, like something like what you just said with the whirl, or run up a mountain as fast as you can. Like, and then some people get to live that over and over and over and over again, where others will like, never do it. It's kind of sad, man. It's weird. It's a weird thought,
It is kind of sad, and it is a weird thought. And I think about that with the people I spend my time with, like my family who has never experienced any of this kind of stuff. And, they hear it from me and like they see what I do and like these things, but like there's a big difference between hearing it and like reading about it and doing it, like putting yourself into this place and like going to a place where you have no idea what's going to happen. You sign up to go do this grand adventure, and whatever comes your way is what you signed up for, regardless if you want it to happen or not. It's like that's part of human life. That's the human experience. So yeah, it's unique, right? And Jason was like he's been a mentor for me in this kind of space, and he really helped me like kind of dig into like that mindset of around why do I do what I do, and how can I have it impact others, or like allow it to impact others in a positive way. And so yeah, the double whirl was a really cool experience to be able to share with a good friend, and really start a really rad friendship with him, and just be more intentful with what I am doing with these projects. Like, it's one thing if you just go run and do all these crazy things, but like if you're able to make it and turn it into something that can like provide somebody a positive message or inspiration or some motivation or whatever it may be, it makes it tenfold better. It's like, yeah, not only am I able to go experience human experience on these levels, but at least somebody else can look and like maybe get inspired to go up and run up that mountain, or go and do sign up for an ultra marathon or whatever it may be, right?
I agree, man. I want to pivot a little bit to so I'm like split. I don't know if I want to talk about winter 14ers or your summer 14ers attempt. What do you want to talk about more?
I'm open to talking about both. Let's do a little hint on winter, and then we'll go into the summer, because I mean the summer was just epic. Okay. So was the winter.
Right. I just find it so absolutely absurd and crazy that you pulled off the winter 14er at like FKT, just because like I don't think people realize how cold
they don't,
and how brutal, like the ability to get like the possibility of frostbite, all these issues and so many things you have to take into accountability. Talk about that record, and I'll leave it open ended, like however you want to talk about it and say, but like, yeah, just like what that meant to you, because that's like one of the crown jewels of the many amazing things that you have done.
I appreciate it. Yeah, the winter 14ers was insane. I mean, like you said, I don't think a lot of people can grasp it. It's like, for one, here, let's just start at the start. Me and Aaron were driving back from somewhere in Texas after we just did a long FKT together, and we were listening to Andrew and Andrea's podcast about their winter 14er experience. And halfway through the podcast, looked over at Aaron and I was like, "Hey, I'm going to do that this year." And she was like, "All right, whatever." And this was literally like maybe 30 days prior to starting. And so I was like, no, this is something I want to do. Like, I want to do this. Let's do it. And so somewhere around Jan 5, I think, is when I ended up starting the project. And I didn't really know what I was getting myself into, if I'm being honest. I kind of just was like, yeah, I'm gonna go do this and see what happens. And I've had several years of backcountry skiing experience. I know how avalanches, the terrain works, and how to like read terrain, mitigate terrain, and do these things, right? So, but yeah, let's just see what happens. And it ended up being a lot more than what I really thought it was going to be. I mean, that year was almost record breaking across the state for snowfall, um, which I don't think a lot of people understand. There was a ton of snow everywhere. Utah got like 300 inches over their average or something ridiculous. And I think the Elks and the San Juans are like really close to breaking records. And so, for one, it was this huge snow year, and it was cold. Yeah, but like, so like, God, it's so hard to break this down. So the initial idea about the project was I was going to try to do them all in 50 days. The idea was like, okay, I'm going to go in, I'm going to try to bang all 50 days. And that didn't happen. I did do 29 and 17 days, and then it kind of all fell apart from there. So we did 29, and Erin actually did all 29 of these with me. She started the project with me. We were on snowshoes, snowshoeing around all over the backcountry, and kind of showing her how to read the terrain and all these things, because she's never done that kind of stuff. And so it was interesting to be able to like have to semi-guide in a way, like, oh yeah, we don't want to go this way, whatever. But I wasn't guiding her, obviously, but it was just this, like, snowshoeing for one sucks. It's not fun. I will never do it again, and it makes things way slower. And two, it's like, it's just hard to do so many peaks back to back to back like we were doing. Long story short, she got frostbite and had to drop out of the project because she was kind of thinking about doing it with me. And once she dropped out, I got on skis and got back to doing like what I actually loved and enjoyed, and it made things way more like enjoyable, way more fun, and a lot faster. And compared to like doing 14ers in the summer, the winter, for me, I found it adds at least 2 to 3 times the amount of times. Like, if quandary took me 2 hours in the summer, it's going to take me a minimum of 4 hours in the winter. And that's kind of how it always was. And then quandary is an exception. Like, you can do that one pretty fast, pretty easy from the road.
Yeah.
But like any of the other peaks and link ups, they were long. I mean, I did 3 21-hour days in the backcountry.
Oh my God, dude.
I can't even count how many 15 to 18-hour days I did. I think the shortest day was quandary at like 4 or 5. And yeah, I mean, there were more days above 12 hours than there were less. And so, it's like having to figure out the mind to play a role in, all these things of like, how do I stay safe for these many days in a row under these conditions with so much snow and under these avalanche aspects and conditions, which were, red lighting and orange lighting and yellow lighting all over the map. It's hard to be able to juggle all that, especially when you're solo for a lot of this. Like, for the last half peaks, I did most of them solo. I had Andrew Hamilton join me on a few, and we did a couple of really mega epics together. But like, moving solo through some of those mountains, and first off, in a place that I've never been before. So like, prior to doing the winter 14ers, I'd only climbed like, I think, half of the 14ers in the summer. So a lot of this was brand new terrain for me. I'd never been there. I'd never seen any of these mountains. I was just like, oh yeah, we'll go figure it out. And like, yeah, it's just incredibly epic, and it's such a big project. And I had no thought of like, this is actually going to happen. Like, I was like, from the start, I was like, man, this is probably not going to actually happen. Like, I'm going to try it and see what happens, but the chance that this actually like is fulfilled is probably pretty slim. And it was pretty slim. Like, so, God, there's so many stories. I don't know where to start.
Oh my!
Should I just like?
Yeah, list them off. Because one of the before you start listing them off on the stories, I do have one question, dude. What the hell was it like? Like, I can't imagine like Pyramid Peak, like the Crestone Needle, like some of these full on like really pain in the ass peaks to be able to do in winter. Like, can you talk about some of those as well? Like any situations on that?
Yeah, I'll talk about all those. So the Crestones actually was going to be day 2 for Aaron and I. Day 2 of the project, the day after we did Pikes, we're like, okay, we're going to go for the Crestones. They just got some recent snow. We didn't know how much because no one was up there, and we didn't know like the snow tell stuff at the point. So we just like go in with our snowshoes and try to figure it out. I think we made it maybe like 5 miles up the valley in like 5 or 6 hours, literally like slogging through way steep, fresh snow. And we get to tree line, maybe something like that. We can see the peaks, and we're like, this is just not going to happen. I mean, it's going to take us 8 hours to get from where we are back to the car, or like round trip from the car to where we were and back. So it's like, this is going to be a 24-hour epic. And that was like our first big fail during the project. It didn't happen. We didn't get any of those peaks. We learned a lot of lessons. Like, one, you got to have flotation. Actually, we didn't have flotation that day. And that's why we learned that lesson, because we didn't bring the snowshoes, because we thought there wouldn't be enough snow for it. And it just, yeah, it taught us a lot of lessons, right? And after that initial, like, no peak day, I didn't have a single other day that I didn't summit. So I summited every single thing first try after that.
Wow.
That was like the first big lesson. And so the next time I went back to the Crestones, I went in solo. This is after Aaron kind of already had a pull away. And I did both of them together over the course of maybe 14 hours or something like that. And there was a group above me that I knew was going to be out there. So like I had this understanding that there was going to be some trail broken to where I could follow in and at least get up there. And I climbed the Crestone Needle with them, and I didn't bring skis for this. So like I was just on snowshoes and, just hiking in, because the approach is kind of schwacky. It's hard to ski through. And so I figured it'd be slower. And climbing the couloir up to the Needle, I was like, I mean, it's steep. It's legit. And it was rad. But coming back down, it was my first time ever down climbing a couloir. Because typically I climb them and I ski down. And I was like, man, why don't I have my skis on me? This is crazy. Like, I can't believe I'm walking down this couloir right now.
That would have been sick with all that snow to ski down that thing. Because you don't hear too many people skiing off the Needle. Like, it's not as much talked about.
It's rare.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But it can be done. It can be done. That's another project for the future, skiing on the 14ers. But yeah, and so I broke away from the group I was with after we got out of the couloir, and they ended up going back down to their camp where they camped for the night. I went straight over to the Crestone Peak. I was like, okay, well, I'm not coming back all the way up here again. I'm going to go get the peak. So I climbed, the peak's couloir, tagged the summit, and glissaded like halfway down it, got out of there. It was a long day, but all the lessons that I learned from the first failure, it translated into many successes after. It's like, bring the gear, have the right nutrition, have the right water, make sure you have everything you need, stay safe, one, and two, to be able to actually pull it off. And that was like the first big, like, stepping stone. And so it's like the next really big story. God, there's so many. So like the next one was going to the Chicago Basin. That one was insane. So I had just finished up maybe Sneffels, and I was going into the basin with Scott Simmons, who is a pretty legit ski-mo dude, biker, runner, all around badass. And I hit him up and I was like, hey man, I just joined the Scarpa team. Do you want to, he was on the Scarpa team, or still is. And I was like, hey man, do you want to go out and do this crazy thing with me? And he was like, yeah, but I just got frostbite from 12 hours of skiing like yesterday. And I was like, oh, that's a bummer. But he decided to still show up, and we still went in together, and we did the first 15 miles together, the approach from Purgatory. It's like, how to forget the exact mileage, but it's like 40 miles round trip or something like that from Purgatory to the Chicago Basin and back. And about 15 miles in, he took his boots off, and his feet were so trashed because of the frostbite and everything that was going on. He had to turn around and bail. And I was like, oh man, yeah, I would too if I were you, honestly, dude. So like, his feet were so trashed, and I felt so bad for the guy because he came in with me and like he didn't get a summit. It was kind of a bummer. And for me, it was kind of scary because I had never been back there before, and these are brand new mountains to me, and I know that they're a little bit more legit. Like, there's a little bit more complexity to the terrain of, like, mitigating avalanche terrain, all this kind of good stuff. And so it was a little frightening to like go into this by myself. And I remember the lesson of being like, okay, well, I can either turn back with him and the project's probably over, or I can keep going and see what I can learn and find out about not only the mountains and the terrain, but myself as well, to see if I have what it takes to even be doing whatever the hell I'm doing right now. And so I did go on and I did climb all four, and that was another 21-hour day where more than half it was spent by myself. And, I climbed Windham. I skied down from Windham to the base of Sunshine, boot packed up Sunshine, skied down Sunshine, and ski patched together some snow patches and rocks all the way over to the others. And remember climbing up the Ulysses and the snow face, which is typically like the trail that kind of cuts under the steep rocky piece. If you've ever been up there.
No, I've actually never been out there.
Okay, so yeah, there's like a kind of a trail that cuts under this big cliff area that puts you on the ridge. And I remember boot packing up this snow face, and it was just like bulletproof ice. Like had my crampons on and everything, and I was like, man, this is not going to be fun to ski down. And so I tag north Eolas, go over to Eolas, and I'm sitting there watching the sunset on Eolas by myself in the Chicago Basin in the middle of winter. Like,
oh my gosh,
couldn't even imagine. Like, I am here by myself. There's nobody coming to get me, and I get to experience this by myself. Like, this is the most amazing thing and amazing feeling ever. Like, being able to sit there and just be like, yeah, this is all for me right now. You know, like nobody's coming out here. I'm the only person here, and now all I have to do is get out of here alive, which is, you know, a big piece of it. But it was just like this super enlightening day out there where it really showed me and taught me that, yeah, I have what it takes to pull this off. I just have to keep going. And that's what I did. You know, I skied down Eolas in the dark, down that ice phase, which was not fun, and skied all the way out. And I skinned the train tracks all the way to Purgatory.
Wow, dude, that's so far. Oh my God. Because I know that general area. That is so far. It's crazy to think.
It was 40 something miles on skis that day. And by the time I got back to the tracks, I was like, oh, I'm going to get out of here. So I was moving pretty quick on the skins. It was just slightly downhill. So I was moving like, I want to say like 6 miles an hour, or maybe even a little faster on the skins, which is really nice. Like, man, it's going to be quick. And at the bottom of the last climb out to Purgatory, my friend Brent met me, and I was like, "Oh, thank God, someone's actually here to say hi!" Like, he showed up. I had no idea he was coming. It was really cool to have him, you know, kind of finish up the day with me. But yeah, you know, the Chicago Basin was like the first real, like, "Hey, man, this is your test. Can you do this?" And I pulled it off, and it was amazing. I couldn't have had it any other way. But it, you know, I thought that there's no way it gets much harder than that, and it did. It got so much harder, and like, for example, even Capitol Peak, I thought that was going to be the hardest, and it wasn't. And it got harder than that. And I climbed Capitol with Matt Randall. You know, we met through Instagram, suggested through a friend, and I was like, he's done it before. He's done Capitol in the winter before, maybe once, twice prior to that. So yeah, I trusted him. I was like, this guy, you know, he knows what he's doing with ropes. He knows what he's doing with the rocks. And like, he's legit. Like, he's a legit ski mountaineer. And so we got together, went out to Capitol, and I remember seeing the knife edge for the first time ever and seeing that covered in snow. I mean, it's just this perfect knife. And like, there's this little bit of a cornice kind of cresting over the knife. And I'm like, oh, this is pretty legit. Like, if you fall, you're going to think about it until you die, you know, 2 minutes later. So it's legit. And Matt really is a trooper. He helped so much on that mountain. And we ended up going ridge direct, which is what you have to do in the winter, because if you don't, then you have to cut through the gullies, which is avalanche prone, very, very avalanche prone. And so we climbed the ridge direct, and maybe like 200 feet below the ridge, Matt was like, man, I think we need to turn around. We're at a place where we have a storm coming in. We can see the storm coming in. It's going to hit us within the next 30, 45 minutes. And, you know, we're just on this really, really exposed place, exposed ridge. It's our first time doing anything together. And he didn't want to get into an epic. And I was like, yeah, I understand that. That makes a lot of great sense. And then I forget exactly what I told him, but we talked through it for like maybe 10 minutes or so. And it got to the point where he was like, yeah, let's actually keep going. And so he led a pitch and then belayed me up the pitch. And then I led the rest of the ridge, the summit, which at that point you don't need a rope, right? It was just kind of like snow scrambling, brush off the rocks, put your axe in, step a few times to crampons, don't slip off the mountain. Do that over and over until you get to the summit. And it was cool because Matt, a person who was at the time and probably still way more experienced than me as a ski mountaineer, you know, wanted to turn back. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, if we turn back, my project's over for sure. So, you know, part of it was a little bit selfish, but also is more so, let's see like what we can do and what the limits are. And it's like, we know how bad the storm is going to be. We've been told by, you know, Chris Tomer, who was helping out with the entire project, what the storm is going to look like. And you're like, maybe we're going to get in a little bit of a whiteout, but how much does that matter with where we were? Because there's only one way up the mountain, and it's down the ridge we came up. So it's like, even if you can't see the full route, there's only one way back down it, and you're gonna know whether or not you're on that ridge going back down it or you're not. It's like there's not really any other. You're either on Satan's ridge or you're on the right ridge or on a face tumbling down the mountain. So like I was like, dude, we can pull this off. Sure enough, we did. We got to the summit. Storm came in, white out. We rappelled, I think, 3 sections. The old classic, wrap the rope around a rock and wrap off of it. And I mean, it was legit. I mean, it was mega. And that was a 16, 17-hour day. And it was spent with a new friend who is a badass and taught me so much. But, to keep the story a little short, it's like I expected that to be super damn hard. And it was. I didn't expect anything to be harder. But it got harder literally the next day. Like, the next day was a harder day than Capital. And that was on El Diente and the Wilsons. And I met up with this dude who was going to do them with me. And pretty quickly into the morning, I realized that wasn't going to happen. We just weren't on the same pace, not the same like vibes and all this kind of stuff. And long story short, I ended up leaving, and he ended up climbing Wilson still, Wilson Peak, and then Mount Wilson. God, those confused me. So I went up and over the pass, dropped down to the basin where Wilson and El Diente are. And I remember climbing Wilson up the north face, which was pretty much a snow climb, pretty simple. And then the traverse from Wilson to El Diente, which I had never been on before, was a classic traverse in the 14ers. Brand new to me. Took me, I think, 6.5 hours.
Wow.
With skis on my back, going through like waist deep snow across this mega ridge where on either side it's like you're probably not going to live if you fall. And I'm like, just being locked in. It's like having to be so locked in to where it's just 6 hours of, okay, you're like facing the ridge or on top of the ridge and you're stepping like step, hand with an axe. So like step, hand, axe, step, hand, axe, step, hand, axe, over and over and over and over for like 6.5 hours to the point where I finally get to El Diente. I mean, it was just like massive ridge slog. And by the time I got there, it was sunset again. So I dropped down the face of the ridge of El Diente to get to the north face of El Diente, which is, I believe, 63 degrees. It's a 63-degree pitch, which is steeper than anything I've ever been on, ever skied before in my life. And I was up there by myself with my skinny skis, like really tiny toothpicks, and like looking down at this flat, light valley and mountain after the sunset. Like there's no light. I can't see. If you've ever skied in flat light, you can't really see that well. Like it's really hard to judge distance, like where you're going. And so like I'm at this mega like 2,500 foot north face of this mountain that I've never been on before, in the middle of the backcountry, or a place that, again, no one's going to come out here, and if they do, it's going to take a long ass time. And just skiing down this crazy face by myself in knee deep powder on a north face in the San Juans in the middle of winter. I'm like just sitting there thinking like, there's just no way this is happening. Like for whatever reason, the San Juans got a green light for like avalanche conditions. I was like, okay, I have to go take advantage of this. So that's what I did. It was insane. Like I'm just, skiing the steepest, probably hardest line I've ever skied by myself on tiny skis in the middle of the winter. It's like, it's hard to even imagine that it's like a thing that people actually do. And I'm this is me doing it. And so it was a really cool experience, but it was a really, really hard day. And that was, again, another 18-hour day. I mean, just slog after slog after slog, but like these beautiful slogs in these beautiful places where, it's hard to even comprehend what you're looking at, because like nobody goes back there in the winter. I mean, people do, but like not a lot of people.
No,
and
much less
nor do you hear about it.
Yeah.
And just so, that one was just so rad. But then it gets even harder. And so like I was like, it can't get harder than that. Right? Like it gets harder. And so like I meet up with Andrew Hamilton, who is the speed record holder for the summer, was the speed record holder for the winter. Legend. And he helped me break his record. Yeah. He did 2 of the climbs with me. I guess technically 3 peaks, but 2 climbs. The first one we did together was 4, because we did longs together. The second one we did together was the Bells. We did North Maroon, South Maroon together over, again, another 21-hour epic. We skied in and climbed the northwest ridge of North Maroon, and we did the traverse out and back So we traverse. Have you done the traverse up there?
No, have not
The
yet.
Bells Traverse?
No.
It's pretty legit. It's super fucking cool. I did it in the summer after that. And I did it in like, so for example, we spent 6.5 hours outbacking the ridge in the winter, and I did it in like 30 minutes one way in the summer.
Shit, dude.
So we were up there on that ridge for a long, long time, and it was so cold, so snowy, so windy, and like just suffering. Like me and him were just sitting there suffering together in silence. I think we both ate like 300 calories that entire 21 hours. Like, just not recommended, first off, but like just bonked and zonked out of our mind, but still functioning to the point where we can put the ropes up and rappel and like be safe and belay each other back up these pitches. And it was, again, another incredibly epic day in the mountains. And we had this insane sunset coming off North Maroon for the second time, going back out of the mountains. And God, yeah, just being able to share that experience with somebody else in the middle of nowhere is one of the coolest things a person could do. Being able to actually like go and put ourselves in these places where if something goes wrong, we may or may not make it. And it's just really, God, there's so many words you can put on it, but it's really touching to be able to share that with somebody else, right?
100%.
The experience is really cool. Anyways, I remember we get to the couloir, back to where my skis are, and Andrew, he'll even admit it, he's not the best skier in the world. So he stashed his skis way lower, and I carry mine up to the couloir because I wanted to ski it. And it's pitch black. Can't see anything but like 5 feet in front of you with the headlamp. And he just sits on his butt and starts sailing down the couloir while I'm getting my skis on. I'm like, whoa. Like, he's gone in like 10 seconds. His light is from right here, and it's gone. Like, I can't even see where he's at. I'm like, oh, well, he just sailed 1,000 feet into the dark. This is crazy. I can't believe he just did that shit. And then I pop my skis on and ski down and meet up with them. And it took him like 30 minutes to get his skis. He's a guy where he carries ski boots and mountaineering boots. And so he had to like switch boots, and like they were frozen, and it was a long, long night. Long story short.
I bet, dude.
I'm going to bring it to one more story to try to wrap up the winter 14er part.
Yeah.
Because I don't want that to take up the whole thing. I'm sure you want to talk about other things. And so the next, I guess those were really close to the final peaks. The final peak was Pyramid. I didn't know. So like from the start of the project, I had no idea how the order was going to go. I was kind of just chasing weather windows, going where it seemed safer, like what might have been easier, less snowpack, all these different variables, right? And for whatever reason, Pyramid ended up being the final peak of the project. And I had this weird suspicion from the start, like, whatever the final peak is, not knowing what it was going to be at the time, is probably going to be the hardest. It's going to give me the most challenge, and I'm going to have to really work for it. Like, it's not going to just be some walk in the park mountain, even if it was a different mountain. Like, that's just what I kind of knew going into this whole thing, was nothing is going to be easy, and the last one's definitely going to be the hardest. And so it was, and that's exactly how it went. And I set out to do Pyramid with Andrew, Dr. John, and one other dude who joined. And man, so God, it's another long day, and so many things happened. We all skinned in really early together from, I don't even know what the ranch is called, but we skinned in really early to go up Pyramid. And it wasn't a great day, like as far as Abbey, like we knew that the northwest faces were loaded, and like we would trigger things, like things would happen as far as avalanches, and they did. And so we get up on the ridge finally of was it the east face? No, the west face. So we get up on the west face with the west ridge face area of Pyramid, and we remote trigger like a pretty large avalanche down some slope pretty close to us.
Shit.
It was like a remote trigger, and we're like, yeah, well, we knew that was going to happen, and it finally did. Fortunately, we were all in a pretty safe place, and we realized that was going to be the case for the rest of the day. Dr. John, another homeboy, ended up flipping around and going back down after a couple more couloir climbs. So it's not your typical standard way of climbing Pyramid. We're going up a route that Andrew kind of knew and he's done a few times that he vaguely remembered at the time. It all worked out great, but you climb these different couloir systems and gullies to get over to like this big bowl area on Pyramid, and going up each one of those couloirs were northwest faces. And so we knew they were all going to slide. We knew the danger was there. It was the last peak, and Andrew and I were like, yeah, we're going to do this. Like, we're going to at least give it a good shot. Right. So like, we're doing a very not untraditional way of mitigating the avalanche terrain. Like literally I'm like scrambling up the side of the couloir on the rocks while stomping my foot through the middle of the couloir to hopefully getting it to trigger.
Oh my God.
And it works. Like again, not recommended by any means, but scrambling on the side of this couloir and then stomping through the middle of it, hoping it'll flush it out, which it did every single time. And that's how we mitigated most of the risk, was like either we would be tied into a rope doing that, or on the wall just doing it one at a time. The other guys would hang out behind a corner or whatever. And so
yeah,
we're mitigating this terrain the whole way up. I mean, it's legit. Like I think we probably purposely triggered 6 avalanches just so we could make a way for us to go up the mountain. And we get to maybe about 500 feet below the summit. And that's when Dr. John and other homeboy ended up flipping around. And Andrew looks over at me. He's like, yeah, dude, we're going to do this. What do you mean? Because I was like kind of back and forth, like, all right, I don't know if we should do this or not. He looks at me and says, we're going to do this, but one thing, we can't die. And I was like, that's perfect. We cannot die. That can't happen. Could it happen? Yes, but we're not going to let it happen. And it's a few more hours to the summit from there. And we're just like mitigating all this terrain in this big bowl, right? So we could see it from a distance. This big bowl, it has this like ramp feature where you go around, hit the summit ridge from like Thunder Pyramid Ridge is like your typical way of doing it in the winter. And it's a northwest facing bowl on that aspect. And we knew that was just not going to happen. There's no possibility that we're going to traverse under these mega loaded slopes. But we still went up there to check it out anyways. And it turns out that we were able to find a sneak through some random like cliff ridge. It was 5th class, like mixed climbing. And we found like a little sneak through this cliff that brought us to the summit. And we were on the southwest facing slope, which was like super soft. I mean, probably borderline soft enough. We're walking through the soft snow, gain the cliff finally, and find a sneak to the summit. And it was crazy. Like Andrew and I had just kind of said, yeah, we're going to do it and make it happen. And that's what we did. We got to the summit, and I just remember falling on my knees and like just couldn't believe that I was standing on the summit at the final peak of the project. Like in all of this actually has happened. Yeah, I mean, I still have to get down safely, right? Yeah. But like just looking through the Alps with Andrew right there next to me and just thinking, man, like we really just pulled this off on like a very not safe avalanche day, which again, not recommended, but yeah, I mean, it was just so hard to believe and imagine that we were on top of the pyramid together. And yeah, we had a long way to go to get out. And, another really cool thing about it is there's a couple people that were following along the project, and they were seeing at Aspen that day, and they actually snapped a photo of us on the summit while we were on the summit.
Oh, shit,
which
dude.
Was so cool. I mean, we get down, and this dude's like, yeah, man, we got a picture of you guys on the summit. We're like, what? Like, that is so crazy. But yeah, it's just like, again, the human experience, being in a place, again, where I just lived however many human experience lives over the course of this project to kind of bring it to an end of, yeah, I mean, I don't even know how to explain it. It's kind of just mind boggling how it all unfolded, honestly.
So crazy, dude. Can you talk about, so one of the things I did want to, before we leave the Winter 14ers, just how supportive Andrew was of you chasing that project. And it seemed like he helped you in a lot of sections too, which is crazy.
Yeah. He was very supportive. At first, I don't think I reached out to him until maybe halfway through the project. I honestly don't reach out to people and ask for much information. I kind of just try to figure things out on my own for the most part, which that's changed a lot over the years. But yeah, when I finally reached out, and he was like super stoked. I mean, he followed along the project the entire way, and he was really excited about it and just really wanted to do what he could to be a part of it. And so I met him on Longs. He joined me and Aaron for Longs, and we were like, man, this is a guy that when I first moved to Colorado, he's one of the first names you hear about in the 14ers. And I was like, I can't believe I'm climbing with this legend right now. Like, this guy is the 14ers guy, like he is the guy, and he's here with us, like, cause he wants to be. And so it was really rad, to be able to share these experiences with him and have someone that's like him, so supportive. Like him and Andrea are supportive of everybody, and like anything like if you're going to go chase one of the records or need help for something that they've done before, they're going to help you. Like they want to help where they can, and it's really cool to see. And I think that's a huge piece of the community. Keeping community strong at least and helping others achieve their goals. And so, yeah, Andrew was just over the top supportive, and like he really enjoyed being out. At least from what it seemed like, he really enjoyed being out there in the mountains, with me and helping me break his record. And like, I don't think he would have it any other way. Like he wanted to be there. He wanted that to happen. And so it was cool. We finished Pyramid, and at the bottom, my family waiting and some friends, and like, it was cool. Like Andrew got to finish it up with me, and he gave me a lot of beta, honestly, too. So like I did end up started asking him questions. Like once we finally got connected, I started asking him stuff, and he helped me out with so many different things. So very supportive, very helping person.
It's amazing, dude. Yeah, and I can't sing his praises enough, and Andrea as well. I've heard only just amazing things about them in the community.
Yeah.
All right, dude. Let's talk a little bit about the summer the summer 14er project, and then after that, I want to pivot to Nepal and Asia.
Sure.
But yeah, we don't have to talk too much about the summer effort, but dude, you gave it one hell of a shot. So I'm just curious to see, like, are you gonna go back and try it one day? Like, what's the plan for this? Because I've seen so many people try. Like, I think it was Drew Francis and a few other people have tried and not come close to what you put into it. So I'm just curious to hear.
Well, it's funny, Drew's given it 2 really solid attempts. In his first attempt, he made it further than I did. He made it to the Elks. His body was trashed, just out of there. So he actually made it further than I did. And I can't remember. I think my splits were just a little bit faster than his at the time. Definitely faster for the first half, I believe. But yeah, I think there's only like 3 people that have attempted it in the past 4 years. I mean, it's such a mega project, right? Yeah. So like the main reason I wanted to give it a go, and will I give it a go again? I'll answer that too. I had this crazy opportunity of trying to be or becoming the first person and maybe the only person ever to do both the winter and the summer record in the same year, back to back. And so it was just like kind of this, I have to at least try type of mentality, whether I didn't put the project together the way I needed to, but I knew I had to at least try. And so that's what I did. I tried. I trained really hard prior to it, stacking like 40 to 50K vert a week leading into the project, and doing a lot of this with Aaron. We were both training for our own things. And so a lot of training, and I had the van built out, ready to rock. I put together a small crew. My younger brother came out to help, and then my good friend Joseph came out to help. And it was literally just us 3. We didn't have anybody else on crew, although there were a few other people that came and helped out here and there. So like our friend Nick came out with some 4-wheelers at some point, which helped a little bit. He helped with some cooking and some support. And like, mainly it was a 2-person crew trying to do this like mega thing, right? Where, we're trying to do my goal was sub 9 days to take 21 hours off of Andrew's time. And I was on pace to do that until I pulled out. But it all kind of fell apart from the start. Like, this is also one of my first really big endeavors as far as like having a crew and like logistics and all these things. And so like, I didn't really know what I was doing, if I'm being honest. I mean, I asked Andrew for a lot of advice, and I slapped together this plan. Like, the logistic plan of like what you need to do to get to each mountain and get around is pretty simple. I mean, there's like kind of one way to do it where you can alternate a few things to make it faster, but that's pretty simple. But like, I pulled together 2 dudes that have never crewed before on anything. And so they're just as new to it as me, and put them in this place where they're going to be mega sleep deprived. They're both driving vehicles. One's driving a 4-wheel drive truck, one's driving my van, driving to different places to pick me up. And so like, it really failed. It really just didn't happen because I wasn't prepared, and I didn't prepare my crew the proper way. Right. We gave it a hell of a shot. And there's so many stories that happened over that 4.5 days. So many amazing things happened. And maybe I just should start from the beginning and just kind of dive in a little bit. I don't know how much you want to talk about it, but
I'm here all night. I want to help tell your story. So you tell me as long as you want to do this.
Yeah, I mean, I've got no time limit. So
all right, let's do it, dude.
Yeah. So, we started out, like, I'm out in the Chicago Basin. I climb all 4. I'm out there with my buddy Gabe, the film guy. Do you know Gabe?
No, I don't think so.
He runs F4D Studios out of Golden, another really good friend. He helped make the film about my 400K back in the day.
Okay. No,
And
I
so
got
he
that.
was coming out to help film some of this stuff, and we're planning on making a project out of it, and still are. And he joined me for the Chicago Basin, kind of came in and like captured like me getting ready to start the project and all these things. So I do it. I start the project. I pull out all four of the Chicago Basin, and I can't remember the time. It was pretty fast. I mean, I was waiting for the train for like 30 minutes, and I took my time getting down there. So, like, long story short, I could start later in the day. That's what I'm getting at. But, um, I get on the train, I get to Silverton, my crew picks me up. This is the first time I'm seeing my crew in like 24 hours. And, what I gave them was a list of foods, a list of things, and like a few locations of gas stations. And like, okay, this is like your map. I gave them a caltopo of like directions of where you need to go to get to each place, like where you should be at each time. So, like, they had the basics, right? But it wasn't structured in a way to where everything was just so broken down that they knew exactly what to make, exactly what to have ready for me. And so, like, the first 2 days, I don't think I really had any cooked food. Like,
Oh shit.
so I was bonked by day one. I mean, I finished the San Juans in less than 2 days because I was at Calabria in 48 hours. But I remember on Letterhorn going over to Uncompahgre, I was just so bumped, and I was literally crawling up the mountain to Uncompahgre. Like, I don't think I ever moved this slow in my life, and everything was going well. Like, I had already climbed 4, 7, 8 of the peaks, 9, 10, 11 of the peaks prior to this, and so like I'm like 11 peaks deep, or 12 peaks deep, trying to get up to Uncompahgre, and I'm like crawling. Like, I can't even believe it. I've had like almost no food besides like gels and bars, goos, and these things. And that just you can't do that for an effort like this. And so it fell apart from the start, really. And we were just kind of trying to like glue pieces together and keep the wheel spinning the whole way. And finally, eventually, I started getting food. Like, I would have like a backpacker meal ready for me every time I got back, and like it was great, but like it wasn't what I needed. And so I learned all these things, sure, but yeah, it was this crazy project where I kind of just threw myself out there. I made it to Calabria in time. The whole like 12 hours going to Calabria, like San Luis, I remember stressing out so hard in the middle of the night trying to climb San Luis and get back in time so I could make it to the gate Calabria at the right time, because you have to be there at 6 a.m. or something,
Yeah.
and they won't let you in later. I mean, there is some flexibility depending on who you are. I'm not saying names, but yeah, it's like, well, I was told I have to be there and I can't be late. And so, like, that was the goal. I have to be there. I have to get 14 of the peaks finished and get all the way to Calabria in 48 hours. And I made it, and I made it with like 10 minutes to spare. So not a lot of time. But my crew busted their ass to make that happen too. Like, my brother put his Tacoma, through the ringer on some of these 4-wheel drive roads to get me down them and get me back in the van where I could rest a little bit. It's just like this crazy mix of, you got people driving here and moving these things, and you got to have food and calories and all these different aspects moving, and it's too much for a 2-man crew to do properly. And so, first off, huge shout out to them for just like hopping into the ringer with me and just getting absolutely wrecked, because they got wrecked and so did I. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of how it started. So I get down to Calabria. I remember this is where Nick popped into the story. My friend Nick Carroll. He came down with his van and his 4-wheelers to help out with some stuff. I remember I called him when I'm coming down Calabria. I'm like, hey man, can you get me a shake from Sonic? I just need like a large, I forget the flavor. I need a large shake when I get down. And I get down, and my crew is gone, and he is there. And for whatever reason, he sent my crew to go to Sonic when I asked him to get it for me. And I was just like, been awake for over 48 hours, like, couldn't believe that
Oh my god.
my
Oh.
crew isn't here with me. Like, I don't have my crew. I don't have my vehicle to lay in and like sleep in. And worst of all, I didn't have my milkshake. So like, I had a tuna sandwich instead, and it just kind of set this weird mood for the rest of the day. And like, I didn't have, because I was using the shake to get a bunch of calories down, and I didn't have it, and so it kind of like set things back. And doing that was right before I went and did Lindsay, which I didn't actually do, but I did do it. I don't really care. Little Bear, Blanca, and Ellingwood. And
Yeah.
so that group, I'm coming into that one again, calorically deficit, which is going to be a part of this project like this. And God, such a hard day. Like it was my first time doing these in the summer. And so like going up and down Little Bear's Hourglass was just absolutely heinous. I mean, I remember I was in there like midnight by myself in the middle of the night, just climbing up this mountain with like I mean, not car size, but like stove sized boulders just rolling down because I stepped on the wrong place. I'm like, man, if someone was below me, like they would be fucking dead.
Yeah,
And so I was
dude.
really glad to be there in the middle of the night by myself, but like not a place you want to be. And like I didn't like it very much. And I remember coming down the road. What is that road called? What is that? God, that road
Como
sucks.
Road.
Yeah, Lake Como.
Yeah,
That road is the worst, man. I
terrible.
had ran it like 3 times in the past, and I remember how bad it was. But after you've been moving for like 60 hours, that thing sucks. Like I was just cussing and going nuts. Like I was just throwing a fit, just an absolute temper tantrum, which was, that's just part of the human experience sometimes, I guess. Um, it wasn't fun, and that's what I signed up for. And at one point, I realized, okay, this is what I'm here for. So like, I can throw a fit or not, and I still did, but it didn't get any better. It honestly probably made it worse. And it was just this long, hard project of kind of that circle, like a rotation of like really good things happening and then it kind of just going down the shitter. And like, I think that's how big projects go. And that's like, something I learned as far as like a mindset to bring into these next things. But yeah, God, then that was only like 2.5 days in. So like, there's a whole another 2 days. I remember after that, we're taking a nap. Me and the team were like, okay, we're all tired. They haven't slept for 2.5 days either. I've been awake for 2.5 days climbing mountains, and like we're all tired. So we're like, okay, we'll do a 30-minute nap. And I wake up an hour and a half or 2 hours later, just like absolutely out of my mind. Like had no idea where I was, didn't know what was going on. But I realized that we overslept the alarm by like a decent significant amount, like over an hour past what we were planning on. And so like I just went into this weird like frantic mode of like what is happening? Like are they that messed up too to where like we just kind of like dropped the ball in the entire project? And it was God, it was so crazy to experience that after being awake for so long. And it's hard because again, like I didn't set my crew up for success. I didn't set myself up for success. And we were just trying to do this big thing and see if it would work. And I'm in this place where God, like, yeah, I haven't slept. They haven't slept. And like we just way overslept our alarm clock. No one even set an alarm clock. They expected me to set the alarm clock for whatever reason is what the case was. I'm like, guys, I'm running the mountains. Like this is not my job, It's like, come on now. But things made a turn. So like right after that, I met up with Dr. John. I don't know if you know Dr. John,
I have met
but
Dr. John actually at Broken Arrow. Funny enough. Yeah.
oh, cool.
Yeah.
He's a friend. I know there's mixed feelings with him about in the community, but he's a good friend, and I like the guy a lot. He joined me for what are those? Like the Creststones and Kit Carson, Challenger, and Humboldt. So we did all five together, like a big link up. He joined me for all five of those. And by the end of it, I was back on top, ready to rock and roll. My buddy Gabe, the film guy, got my crew back together, and they like started actually cooking meals and having things ready. And it's like we were in this like cycle of everything is going great, everything is perfect. Like we're back at it. Like it started off for a really rough 3 days. Like nothing was really going the way it should have gone, and now we're actually kind of like clicking and figuring it out. And it went well for about 24 hours. And then I remember going up Princeton after doing Pikes and then Antero and Chavano and Tabawash. It just keeps going. It's like pretty much you have an hour-ish of rest in between each of these peaks. Like there's not really any sleep. I mean, it's kind of just lay down and hopefully you get a little bit of rest and then get up and keep going for 9 days. And it was like 4 days in, I'm climbing Princeton, making good time. I'm like, I think I'm going faster than I've ever done it before, ever. And I started coughing up blood. So I didn't really know what was going on. Like I knew what HAPE was. Like I know what HAPE is, what it is, and all that kind of good stuff. And I started messaging around to some friends and nurses that I knew, and they were all like, "You've got HAPE. Like you need to get down and whatever, whatever." So they started this like there's this big like fear mongering thing happening. And honestly, my body was fine. Like I didn't have any issues at the time. I just coughing up a little blood, which is not great. I'm not saying it's okay, but everybody was telling me to stop for the most part. Andrew and Andrea were like, "Nah, you'll be fine. Just keep going." And for whatever reason, I didn't listen to the legends. We went down to, I should have just listened to them, but we went down to Buena Vista and we like calmed down for maybe an hour and a half and like try to like figure things out. And at this point, I was in such a like deep like place to where I wasn't able to think for myself in that sort of way. And so like my crew wasn't very motivated to keep going, which kind of led to no motivation for me. And so like even though I was coughing up blood, which wasn't a ton of blood, people were really concerned. And yeah, that's why I pulled out, honestly. And I thought I had HAPE. And honestly, I don't think it was HAPE at all, because I've done these crazy things at 8,000 meters without oxygen and never had any issues. I think what it was just overuse and like literally just, breaking my body down. And would I have gotten worse over the next 4 days? Probably. I mean, more than likely it wouldn't have gotten better, right? But like, yeah, it kind of just, it really put a stop to the project. And it's sad because like, it didn't start the way it should have gone. Like I should have put it together better. Shoulda, coulda, woulda, right? But it's sad and it's not, and it's beautiful because now it's put this perspective on me to where I know I can do it. Like I know I have the physicality to do it. And I know I can make and put together like a proper support team and make it happen. It's just when. And like right now where I'm at in life, like I have these opportunities to go to the Himalayas and do these things and like travel the world and climb these big mountains and like, chase these other dreams that I've had for a long time. So it's been hard for me to like balance putting something like this on the calendar again to where I can give it a shot. And I do want to go back and give it a go. And I want to see it through and realize that dream. I think it will happen. I know it's going to happen at some point. It's just a matter of when, and it's probably not going to be this summer, if I'm being honest. And it may or may not be next summer because I have another huge project I'm gearing up for. So it's like
it's gonna take some time. Yeah,
it's gonna take time,
and you can be older and still do it. Like it's not like it's something you have to do in your, at any point in time in your 30s. Like you could easily go do it in your 40s, maybe a little bit slower, but like. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think so.
I don't know. Andrew did it in his 40s, so
right. So it's like, and yeah, I think you have plenty of time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the mindset at the time when I pulled out of the project because of the blood and the stuff is like, well, maybe I do go, maybe I do finish, but maybe I destroy my body where I can't keep doing these things for another 10 or 15, 20 years the way I want to. And that was kind of the mindset. It was like, this will be here. Like, but if I destroy myself and like actually get hurt or injured, like, messed up, like maybe it won't be here. And so that, it's there, it'll be there. It's a mega project. I mean, it's probably the hardest FKT peak bagging project out there. I mean, I don't know anything harder. I mean, there's just so many aspects to it. And there's definitely not a lot of people that have what it takes to even like give it a go.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't seen too many people try since you, man. It's been interesting. Every now and then in the summer, someone will spray a little bit and be like, I'm going to go do it. And they'll try to put together a group and never pull it off. So yeah, I don't know. I might not be touched for a long time. Yeah. So it's interesting.
I don't see it being touched. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of aspects. You gotta have to be willing to put in like $5,000 minimum into the whole thing. And that's like doing it on a very cheap, low end budget. Like when Andrew and Andrea did their thing last year, they had ATVs and vehicles and vans, and I guarantee like their friends came to help them, but like it still costs money, right? I mean, putting gas in all those things and feeding all these people, it's a lot. It's a big project.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Dude, thank you for breaking both of them down. Like I mean, I haven't heard it described and, from you personally, like in such an eloquent way. So it's like, it's cool to be able to, have it like have the story told, which is pretty dope.
Yeah, man.
So I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
Let's talk Himalaya. I think that's the ending capstone that I want to go, like we'll talk future plans for the Himalaya as well, but I want to talk about what you've been up to, like Ama de Blam. And I probably just really butchered the pronunciation of that.
No, I think that's how you pronounce it.
Did I get it? Oh man. All right. Yeah. I'll let you take it away from here, but I'm so curious to hear what you've been doing in the Himalaya with Tyler.
Yeah, sure. So I met Tyler through Jason Hardrath, good friend. I joined him for the Atacama stuff on the Ojos de Salado. You just talked about that, so I won't go into too much detail, but long story short, he put me in touch with Tyler And, Tyler was gearing up to go to the Himalaya for his second expedition or third, something like that. And I met Tyler out in the Atacama as well. So I joined him for another Atacama trip. We clashed. Everything was great. We had a good time together, and our styles are very similar. And so he invited me to come to the Himalaya, and I was like, sick. Like, I can't believe I'm getting invited to go on an 8,000 meter expedition, like less than a year after I did the winter 14ers. Like, my dream was I want to climb 8,000ers. I want to do these big mountains. I didn't expect it to be so fast. Like, literally within a year, I was in the Himalaya. It was insane. Like, to even think that things can move that fast. But Tyler and I teamed up. We joined together to attempt a speed record on Lhotse. That was kind of the main goal for the spring Himalayan expedition. We failed miserably on all of our objectives. So we were planning to do Pamore, Lhotse, and then if things went well, try Makalu as well for records. And long story short, we didn't summit any of those. We did summit Island Peak and La Boche, some smaller 6,000ers. So I got a couple Himalayan summits under my belt, and we spent like 6 or 7 weeks up in Himalaya Everest Base Camp. And long story short, there it's like base camp sucks. I hate that place, honestly. It's like it's beautiful. First off, it's amazing, but like it's a hard place to live. Living at 17,000+ feet is not easy. And like you just can't really train. Like we were still training more than anybody else out there, but like you just can't train and recover, like come down and like, recover to go do it again the next day. And so it's a different lifestyle. And I'm not a big fan of it, honestly. At least not the Everest Base Camp. Like some of the other base camps I've been to have been great. I've enjoyed it a lot. Like even just going down 2,000 feet makes a huge difference. So yeah, first Himalayan season was kind of a botch. We showed up with these big aspirations, pulled out nothing, didn't make a single thing happen besides some training days, and it was a good experience. We learned a lot. We learned what our limits were and like how to be safe about our limits, and like we learned how to mesh with each other and make good decisions as teammates. Like for example, our Lhotse attempt, we turned around at Camp 1 because when we were climbing through the ice fall and to Camp 1, we got caught in a whiteout blizzard, and the tracks were covered. Like you couldn't see any of the tracks from the past. You couldn't see the ropes. You couldn't see the crevasses. And so, we're walking in this whiteout in this crevassed glacial ice field where you take the wrong step, you're going to fall into a crevasse and probably not get taken out, get pulled out. One, because it's the middle of the night and there's nobody out there. And two, because we're traveling so light that we're not carrying all that kind of extra stuff. We're planning on following the ropes that are set for us to get up the mountain. That was the idea. And so, yeah, weather hit, and we turned around and tucked our tails behind our legs and ran down the mountain and got out of there. It was just this big epic failure, and it was still rad. It was an awesome experience, and I wouldn't have had it any other way, honestly. But fast forward a little bit, Tyler and I rejoined together. We head back to the Himalaya for my second season, and whatever season it was for him. For Manaslu, his goal was to climb Manaslu, set a speed record, and mine was to ski it. So I went out there with the intention of skiing it. I brought out my ski boots, my skis, all my goods, all that stuff, and I didn't end up skiing it, long story short, but I was able to summit it, and it was this crazy thing. So like Manaslu is the 8th highest mountain in the world. It's a little bit easier than like Lhotse and Everest and some of the others. It's not the easiest, but it's easier. They're all, when you're climbing a fixed route, it's all pretty simple. You just follow the rope, and if you have the strength to get up it, you can get up it. I mean, I'm not saying it's like super hard by any means, but there's other aspects that make it hard. It's like the altitude, for example. So, prior to the Manaslu, the highest I had been was 7,300 meters, which is right around 24,000 feet, I think. For people that don't do the old meter metric system. We're on Manaslu. We're there for a couple weeks. We're only there for like 3 weeks. Man, it was a short season. Really epic. We fly straight into the valley, hike up to Manaslu Base Camp, which is at like 15,000 feet, much lower than Everest Base Camp. It's a place where you can actually like kind of run around, go up, go down on trails, and not come back to base camp feeling like you're about to die and it's hard to live. And so it was a little bit more enjoyable being at Manaslu Base Camp. It was great. Sherpas are nice. We got great cooks, great food. Dawa Steven over at Asia Trekking, he's the man. We love that guy. So good things all around. But to get into the climb, we broke our climbs into different days. So, we trained together. We carried heavy loads up to Camp 1, then to Camp 3 with, our big high mountain gear just in case we would need it. Ended up not needing it. So we carried like 40 pounds of gear each for almost no reason to Camp 3, which is right around 6,600 meters. So that's like 22,000 feet or so. And that was like a pretty good acclimation day. We had only been up to 5,800 meters prior to that. And so we kind of just started jumping. Tyler and I go at this different, we do things differently as far as acclimating. We have never slept up high. We have never done like your traditional go to Camp 1, sleep, go to Camp 2, sleep, go to Camp 3, come down. We've never done that. What we do, just because we're able to and we're a little bit faster than most people, is we go up as high as we can, or where we're planning for the day, touch that, maybe hang out there for a few hours and then come back down. And that's how we go about acclimating. Because spending nights up at those altitudes, honestly, I don't think it helps unless you just have to. Like some people, that's just their only option, right? But like for us, it's not. And so we try to get up high fast and get back down. That's how we acclimated. A couple days after that, I went up to 7,000 meters carrying my skis. I stashed my skis around 7,100 meters. And the reason I turn around is because I was wearing like some lightweight boots, not 8K, not 6K boots, like some, I can't even remember, just like regular trail runners or something, something ridiculous. And it was a really, really cold, windy day. So I stashed my skis much lower than I was expecting. I was planning on bringing them to Camp 4, which is like 700 meters below the summit, 2,100 feet below the summit. And so my whole thing was kind of stretched out a little differently. Like I didn't have my skis where I wanted them. I didn't have them where I needed them to be. So it changed plans for me. And I ended up getting sick again right after that. I got a stomach bug, so it put me in bed for a few days. Tyler went up for his last acclimation day, which actually ended up being his summit day. He was going to go to Camp 4 to acclimate and pulled out the record on that same day, went to the summit in like 9 hours and 50 something minutes from the base, which is like 12,000 feet of climbing, all the way up to 26,800 feet or something like that. I can't remember the exact numbers. So yeah, like I wake up from being sick and Tyler just smashed the record by like 3 hours. I'm like, oh wow, I thought this was supposed to be an acclimation day for him. He went from 6,600 meters, not going any higher than that prior, straight to 8,200 meters.
Wow.
So like, it goes to show that the way that we're acclimating, it works for certain people, and it worked for me too. Like before I did my summit push, I had only gone to 71, and I went 1,000+ meters higher than that for my summit push. So let's dive into that a little bit, I guess. The idea behind the way that like our style is to go base camp to summit and not stop and sleep on the way, just kind of go up, get down. And that's what we did. And that's what he did. And that's what I did as well, but separately. No support on the mountain, doing everything ourselves besides following the fixed ropes, which, if I'm being honest, the fixed ropes is a huge piece of support. Like I wouldn't say it's not, because what those guys do on those mountains it's big time, and it helps out so much with anybody climbing. And I won't take that away from that. And personally, I don't even know if my like real mountain the vibe is using fixed ropes in the future. I just don't know how I feel about it yet. So anyways, I get up to my skis after pushing for however many hours, and I'm carrying my skis from 71 up. And during the summit push, I'm carrying these heavy ass skis. For whatever reason, I don't have my super light skis. I don't know why. And I'm moving too slow. I realize that the speed that I'm moving up this mountain, it's going to put me at the summit right around sunset. And I'm not too keen on coming down an 8,000 meter mountain by myself at sunset with skis and probably not enough warm gear. Like, again, I'm traveling light. I was on the summit of Manaslu with like your regular sun hoodie and a windbreaker on.
Wow, dude, that's crazy.
Insane. It's crazy. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. And so I don't have the 8,000 meter suit with me. I don't have 8K boots. I don't have any of the stuff that's going to help me survive through the night if I want to, or if I have to, because, our idea is to get up and get down fast. And, I know myself and like my abilities well enough to where if something isn't happening right and I need to get down, I can get down to wherever I need to fast enough. And part of that like intuition was, hey, I need to drop my skis here at Camp 4 and go to the summit without them. And so unfortunately I didn't get to ski the summit. I carried my skis all the way up the mountain almost to do no skiing at all. And it's like, okay, well, maybe it's just a big weight training day for the future. But, it's kind of a bummer, but it didn't really matter that much to me at the point, and it still doesn't. It's like I dropped those skis and I made it to the summit around 4:30 p.m. And I was the only person on the summit of Manaslu at that time of day. And there was no wind. It was perfectly still. I hadn't seen a person in like 3 hours. And I'm on the 8th highest mountain in the world by myself with no oxygen and just hanging out in like perfect weather. Like I'm talking probably warm. I mean, it was so warm. Can't even express to you what it's like being up that high and feeling like you're in Colorado in the spring or something.
What? That's wild.
Yeah, literally.
I mean, like the average person listening to this is thinking like, all right, anybody climbing a mountain that high, like you said, 8,000 meter suit, you're in, one of these life suits, basically. That's so wild to think you're like in a hoodie and a light jacket. That's bananas. Yeah,
just absolutely perfect weather. It's like I'm wearing like just a regular old Gore-Tex pant, like nothing too special, like just your average hiking pant, which again, this is not recommended for your typical average person because it's just not for obvious reasons. Right. So, but yeah, it's insane to even think that that's even a possibility. And, I think that both Tyler and I and others as well are in this position of being able to like kind of change the style of climbing these big mountains. It's like Tyler did that in trail runners. He went to the summit of Manaslu in trail runners. So like, if that speaks volumes to anything, it's like these mountains are being climbed in a way to where, like the majority of people are climbing the mountain in the way to where you have to have these things because they're just too slow to be up there in the first place to, not have that gear. Like you have to have it for most people because most people are just too slow for it, which is not a problem. I mean, that to each their own, right? But, for us, we're like, we're fast and light. Like we're not going to carry all the shit that we don't need because it just makes you slower. And in return, if you're slower, you need more stuff. And so it turns into this like rocket fuel effect, right? Where it's like, okay, now I'm slower. I have to stop here. So I need more stuff so I can stop there. And then so on and so forth. But it's crazy, it's like going from this climbing all the 14ers in Colorado in the winter to standing on top of my first 8,000 meter peak by myself in like perfect weather. It's a feeling it's impossible to describe. I mean, I guess you could just say human experience is all there is to it. I remember just crying, and I was able to get a phone call down to my parents, and I was able to get a phone call from the summit through the radios to my parents all the way in Texas. Talked to them for a short amount of time. I was able to send a message to Aaron from up there. Crazy. I mean, that's
so wild, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. But it wasn't easy by any means. It was so damn hard. Like
sure.
It was hard, but like it was still easier than I thought it was going to be. I went into this mindset of like, this is going to be like impossible. Once I get to the death zone, it's going to be impossible to keep moving. It's going to be so slow. And it was slow. Like I know I was moving at 150 to 200 meters an hour, which is like 600 plus feet or so. Not even. And, it's slow, but like it was never to the point where I was thinking, man, this is like actually like super, super damn hard. Like, it is hard. Like it's incredibly hard. It was probably the hardest thing I'd ever done at the time, but like it was much easier than I envisioned it in my head, which I think is a good thing to do, is like to purposely envision them making these objectives harder. And when you go to them and they're actually easier, it's like, oh, well, I'm going to keep doing that. So I keep tricking myself and make these things easier. But I mean, in reality, it's like, it's really hard. Like I remember coming down the mountain, like in the middle of the night, and I was just out of it. Like I was so jacked by the time I got to Camp 3. I ended up laying down for a few hours at Camp 3, and like I was crawling into camp, like just destroyed. But again, like, you hear so many people talk about, getting to the summit's one thing, getting down's another. And honestly, getting down was way harder than it was getting up. Getting to the summit, it was hard, but like, it wasn't like, okay, well, probably do it again if I wanted to, but getting down was really tough. Crazy experience, man.
That's wild, dude. Let me ask you this real quick, and I don't want to pivot too hard, but I'm just curious, like physiology perspective, like when you're that high and you stay that high for that long, and then you come back to like sea level or even like Colorado, do you feel like a god when you run? Like, does it just feel super easy? Like, how does it? Because I think the highest I've ever been is just like a little over 14,000 feet for what, Albert? Like that's
Yeah.
just so bananas to think that like you're almost double that, and then you come back. Like, what does that feel like?
There's definitely benefits to it. It's kind of a two-way street because one, you're not training as much as you would be up there as you are down here. So you come back a little less fit. So it kind of like correlates to itself. Like you're not as fit, but you're way more acclimated. So things are easier. Your body's able to process more oxygen. So it's much easier to do things. But if you're not fit, you still can't do it. Right.
And the power, and then there's the power generation, right? Like you can't generate power as quickly that high. So like if you were to try and do something fast down low, it's like a trade-off, right? It's just interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think the way to do it is you need to go into the Himalayas, like if you're trying to do these big objectives, you have to go there really, really fit, and then understand that you're probably going to lose a little bit. You could maybe, kind of do what we did and hold on to a lot of it prior to your objective, but at the end of the day, when you leave the Himalaya, if you're going up to these high altitudes, you're probably going to be less fit than you were when you got there, and that's just how it goes. And so, yeah, it's hard to say like superhuman. Yeah, like altitude, all that stuff's super easy, but it translates across the board, right?
What's it like having Tyler as a partner? Just because, like, I mean, Tyler's like reputation precedes him in the fact that like he comes from like a track and field background. The dude is like just a freak athlete. Not saying that you're not. Like, you're obviously a freak athlete as well. But like, what is that like working with him from a partnership perspective?
Yeah, man, it's interesting. He's 5 years older than me, so he's got a few years on me, and he's been doing it much longer. Yeah, you wouldn't never guess by just looking at him. He definitely looks younger than that. You're welcome, Tyler, if you're listening to this. Yeah, it's interesting. He is obviously a world-class athlete. He's mega fast. I mean, one of the fastest dudes I've ever met and fastest guy I've ever ran around with. So chasing him up and down the mountains it's not easy. Like, I am not his speed, and I won't even act like I am. And could I be his speed? I believe so. I believe in 5 or 6 years that I could be at that level, and I could be doing the things that he's doing at his caliber of speed. And I think it's possible. And I think that's one of the really interesting parts about a relationship. It's like he comes from this background, like you just mentioned, but also as a coach, and has coached so many athletes to do amazing things. And just being able to pick his brain and like, ask him about his training and like how he goes about living and like what he does to, what he's done to get to the point where he's at. It's been very helpful. It's changed my entire way of training, the way I go about approaching mountains and my objectives. I'm a lot more focused into doing like work, both indoor and outdoor, that is going to be more beneficial to my objectives rather than just going and playing in the mountains, which first off, that's great. I love just going and playing in the mountains. But when you have these goals of trying to become the best in something, you have to do things that other people aren't doing, and you get to do more of it. And so, I've been trying to learn how to structure all this, and he's helped a lot with that. And so it's been really cool to have him kind of as a mentor in the world of really just trying to become more elite, become more fat, just to get faster, get more fit, and do all these things. And beyond that, it's cool. He's a funny dude. We get along really well. We laugh a lot. We talk a lot of shit, and it's just great. Like, we have a good time together, and it's never a dull moment. Good guy to be around, really easy to talk to, and he's just down to earth. So yeah, I love him, man. He's a good dude, and I'm looking forward to doing more stuff with him. He's helped me in numerous ways, whether it's sponsorship stuff or just teaching me, how to train more properly. And so I think our strengths are different. Like, I think I'm more comfortable with the very quote unquote scary stuff, like exposed, doing big things on the mountains that don't involve speed. And he's better at being fast. So like when we team up on certain projects, like big Himalayan stuff, we do our training days together because he knows and I know that I'm more comfortable in the hard and scary stuff, and he's faster. So like we balance each other out in those ways, and so we're able to help each other in those aspects, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, and that answers exactly what I was kind of thinking, like the way it would work out with the dynamic. That's cool, man. I couldn't imagine having like a better partner. Like that's dope.
He's a good dude.
Dude, and he's shout out. He's a La Sportiva teammate of mine, even though I've never met him.
Yeah,
I gotta meet him at some point in time. But anyway,
you should.
Yeah, we gotta have him on. Where was I going with this? Alma de Blanc. Talk to me about that. I want to hear all about this record because you have 2 route variations, if I remember correctly, 2 route variation FKTs on that.
Yeah, so actually I took down Tyler's route from the base, Pengboche, which is a village at the very bottom of the mountain, to the summit and back. Well, to the summit and to the summit and back. So I took down Tyler's record. Yeah, it was kind of this crazy experience. So like that was like one of my main goals going to this trip after Manaslu. We spent, I forget how long, 6 weeks for the Khumbu, running around doing different things, and a lot of that I actually spent sick. I got sick probably 3 times throughout that 6 weeks, whether it was a stomach bug or whatever, and it kind of put a damper on my training. And so prior to Amida Blanc, I hadn't gone up. Amida Blanc is right below 6,900 meters. And so like prior to my attempt, I hadn't gone above 6,000 meters in almost 3 weeks. Wow. Highest I'd been was like 58, and I wasn't able to train. Like my plan was to go to Amida Blanc, spend like maybe 10 days or so kind of going up and down the route, learning it, doing the things I needed to do to learn it, going to the summit and going to Camp 3 and Camp 2 and all these things, right? Well, I got sick again, and it pretty much took out all those plans. Like my only training day on Amida Blanc was me carrying all gear that I needed to self-support myself at Camp 1. And I went up there and I dropped that stuff off. I was with Tyler and Aaron that day, and that's the only training I did on Amida Blanc. It was kind of a bummer. Like my plan was to go in and like maybe run it 5.5 hours up or whatever, or 6 hours up, and like take off a good chunk of time. And it just didn't happen. I wasn't acclimated. I was sick. I showed up to the starting line. I still pulled it off, and it was incredible. Like I was stoked to be able to do what I did under like the circumstances, but it wasn't the full deal. Like I could go back and I could shave off hours, and I know I could. And so it's kind of one of these things where like maybe I'd be open to trying it again. But like, yeah, it was cool. I mean, it was fun. It was an interesting experience. Again, tying in the human experience to this one specific one. It's like, being sick and like not being able to train for your objective and still being able to pull it off kind of I feel like speaks a lot to my capabilities. And that's where I'm like, hey man, I just need to be enabled, So, but it's a rowdy mountain. I mean, I think it's 9,500 feet vert from the bottom straight up in like less than 11 or 12 miles round trip. So super steep route, super fun. And yeah, it's kind of an ass kicker. I mean, especially when you're not acclimated and you're not prepared for it like the way you wanted to be, going above Camp 1, I had never been, I guess, let me take that back. I had been up to almost Camp 2 in the spring with Tyler. Long story short, we didn't summit. It was kind of just a training acclimation day. And so I had never seen anything above that. And there's a lot of pretty legit terrain. Again, it's all roped. So like if you can Jumar yourself up the mountain, you have to, unless you're like a legit alpine climber, which is kind of the way I'd like to climb it in the future. So yeah, like not knowing what to expect on the mountain played a big role. Being sick played a big role. Not having the support I needed played a big role, but I still pulled it off. It was rad. I mean, I don't want to like downplay it by any means, and it's hard to talk it up to where it should be, just because I know what my capabilities are and like what I could actually do on that mountain. And so, yeah. And then coming down it, it's kind of a shit show. Like you have to plan it so perfectly because there's so many like places where you can get caught up in groups. And if you get caught behind a group, getting around to people in some of these groups, it's like you have to go off rope where you have like a 5,000 foot drop to your left and like be comfortable enough to, put it around somebody, clip it in, and not get kicked off the mountain. I mean, there's ways to be safer, but when you're moving fast and light, it's like you want to do it a certain way. And, I got caught in several trains. I remember standing in one spot for like 45 minutes on the way down, waiting for these people to get down with the gray gully or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, I probably lost 2+ hours just waiting around on the descent. So, again, there is so much time to take off of that record. And, yeah, I mean, I'm stoked and I'm proud of what I did with the circumstances, but it's like, yeah, there's just a lot of meat on that bone. So
yeah, dude, I love it, man. Dude, what? All right, so I got to ask the question. I know you're not gonna give me too much just because I wouldn't. But like, what is next? Like, where's this leading? Like, where are we going here? Are we going to Everest? Like, what's the plan?
Yeah, man. So I signed up for my first 100-mile race.
Did you really?
Yeah, it's gonna be it's gonna be rowdy. I will announce it when it comes.
Okay.
And then after that, I'm going back to Himalaya for another big project. So I will be re-attempting Lhotse, going for the speed ascent by myself. Tyler will be on Everest, which I don't even know if I'm supposed to say that or not. I don't think it matters,
You
but
heard it here first.
um, yeah, maybe so. And so we're going to be attempting records on those. And then there's a big project around that. I'm not going to talk too much about it because I don't know if I'm supposed to, but there's a really big, really cool project around this whole next Himalayan expedition in the spring, and it's going to be sick. Like after the spring, if we chat again, I'll fill you in on more details, but
Yeah.
and or once we get off the phone, but it's going to be rad. It's going to be really cool. And then Aaron's also going to be there going for Amida Bomb. So yeah, the spring, it'll be a big season of sending it out in the Himalayas one more time, trying to do some cool things and, go back for what we missed, a year ago, like on Lhotse. So that's the next big-ish thing. It's pretty big. The really big thing I have coming up in the future is this mountain project that I'm working on with Jason Hardrath. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I'll tell you what it is and what it'll kind of look like at some point. There are 100 6,000-meter peaks in the Andes, and nobody has climbed all of them.
Holy
They've
shit.
all been climbed, but nobody's climbed the entire list.
Okay.
So my idea is to go and do that. And whether it works out the way I plan, probably won't happen. But, there's a lot of aspects into it. And I'm happy to talk more about it. And I think it's one of those things to where I would rather talk more about it once we get closer to it.
Yeah,
because, I'm still working on putting this project together. But it's going to be this pretty much this mega mountain project, all above 6,000 meters, 100 peaks, and nobody's done it. And there's a lot of really, really, really hard peaks, and some of those have only been climbed once or twice. And so there's a lot of different logistic aspects that go into it. And yeah, I guess you're really hearing it here first because I haven't announced it or said anything about it. And so
hell yeah.
that's
Dude.
what I'll give you.
Oh my god, dude, you got some serious goals, bro. Oh my god, here I am, like, oh, I'm gonna run the Cirque Series this year, and then I hear all this, like, dude, I love your lifestyle first of all, but like one of the things that I find really interesting about you and this like group of folks like yourself, Aaron, and others is like it never used to be possible to pursue these goals without being like having to be like a dirt bag, if you will, like bare minimum scraping by, no sponsorships, and if you are, it's like very little. But now it's like I'm not saying like it's like Jim Walmsley level money, but like I'm what I am saying is like you guys are able now to. It's a different world. Like you can have a career doing this and, for however long it is, which I find to be very interesting. And I feel like it's this new frontier, if you will, of these athletes pursuing, like yourself, like Aaron, like others, pursuing these big objectives in the mountains, more so on the FKT and speed record. Tyler's a great example as well. Like, so I'm so happy that Sportiva brought him on and he's been able to do what he's been able to do. So it's just interesting to me. I don't know if you could speak more to that.
Sure.
What your thoughts are, as far as that goes. Am I missing the mark, or like, what are your thoughts on that?
You're pretty close. I mean, it's interesting, right? Like there are people making a lot of money, and I know what some people are making doing these things, and like there are people making a lot of money, like more than your average American to do this kind of stuff. And I'm not at that point. When I first started out and got my first contract with Rab, I still had a lot of money saved. Like I put away a bunch of money just so I could kind of go chase this for some time. And I don't have that money anymore. Like I've literally spent all the money I've had saved and put it into this lifestyle in hopes of getting to the point to where it'll like actually support me. And I'm getting closer, like I'm stoked to be where I'm at, and it's growing every year. And so I'm close to being able to do the things that I want to do, but it's not to the point, like some of these projects that I have, they're so big and so like quote unquote impossible without the right amount of funding and the people behind it, that there's no way I could do some of like my goals without proper sponsorship. And even with proper sponsorship, I'm not saving any money. So I'm hoping that's going to change in the next couple of years. Like I think some of these bigger projects are going to change that for my life, and things are already starting to change. But if I'm being honest, I'm putting all of my money back into this lifestyle as of right now. And I'm trying to like shift that. So like the next few years is trying to shift that into where I can like not only, do this lifestyle, but build it into more than just, hey, me going and playing in the mountains, So I've started doing different things like with Tyler's company, coaching and guiding. So I join him on guiding trips, and I do a little bit of coaching on the side as well. I've also dabbled in photography over the past year and a half, and so these are different aspects that I'm starting to work into my expeditions, adventures, whatever you want to call it, and it helps. Like half of my income for the year as of right now is from photography, and again, it's not like maybe not half. I would say a little more than a third. But it kind of puts it on perspective, right? Like I'm not able to do these things without proper sponsorship. And if I'm being honest, man, I've been fortunate to have my family being willing to support me in a lot of aspects of my life over the past few years, just because they believe in what I'm doing. And
It's beautiful. I love that.
I can't, thank them enough. I mean, like I wouldn't be able to have done what I've done the same way over the past few years without their support too. So like if I'm being honest, like the sponsorship's great and it's really good for a lot of people and some people, but like yeah, it's a weird thing to say, but like my family has really helped me just because they know and believe, and so do I. And I believe it's going to get to the point here in the near future where that's all going to change. So yeah, it's a hard lifestyle. Like it's hard to be like, yeah, I'm doing all these things. It's really cool. Like it's really rad. Like I wouldn't change my life for anything, but I also don't have any money, you know?
That's
So
tough,
it's
man.
weird.
Tough,
And
yeah.
it's not like, you need money to live. And at some point I won't be able to do what I'm doing. So like my perspective right now is I won't be able to do any of this stuff in maybe 15 or 20 years, like just not to the level that I'm doing. Like there's just no chance, right? I mean, can I still go adventure and do really rad stuff? Yes, but like to what the goals that I have set for myself and things that I'm trying to do, it's just not going to happen. So like, I don't want to wake up in 10 or 15 years and think like, what if? Like, what if I would have done this instead? Like, what if I would have got that job that would have given me six figures or whatever it may be? Like that's not the kind of person I am, and
Yeah.
I know like I can always make money in this life, and so that will happen. If it doesn't happen with this, it'll happen at some other point. And
Right.
again, like I truly believe that the trajectory that I'm on and the people I'm surrounding myself with, all this stuff is going to work out just the way it needs to. And so
Absolutely.
I'm not too worried about it, honestly. But yeah, people are making legit careers out of this lifestyle, and it's really cool to see, and it's super inspiring, and it makes me want to work harder because I know that it's not just a handout. Like, I spent a lot of time training, and it's almost a full-time job. So like, yeah, there's a lot that goes into this stuff. And I know that's the same for anybody that's training for a race or whatever it may be. And so like, not to downplay anybody's abilities and what they want to do with their life, but like, it's not easy. So
Yeah. No, dude, it's to train at the highest
yeah,
level of the sport, or as high of a level as you could possibly make it, is a full-time job. And then you got to factor in recovery. Dude, you got to
right.
factor in a lot of shit, man. Yeah, it turns into a 40-hour a week easy.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting. I appreciate you for being so candid and being open about it, because it's a
right.
conversation that like I think people see shit on Instagram and like they think it like one way, but it's like, yo, that's not reality. Like Instagram is
Right.
not, it's not like, that's not the way this actually works. Like there's a stark reality to it, and it's a business at the end of the day, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So, no, I appreciate that,
It,
man.
yeah. And I'm happy to talk more about it and like fill anybody in that wants to reach out. So it's like, it just is what it is. And again, I'm fortunate to be where I am because of a lot of people and different things. And so, yeah,
Yeah,
it just is what it is.
yeah, man.
It's an interesting world.
That said, I will say one thing. The beautiful thing is like you're living your dream, dude. And like,
Sure.
I don't meet too many people that can say that. It's like,
Yeah,
that beats the hell out of, working a 9 to 5, coming home,
totally.
drinking a beer and watching television. It's like,
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's like
I would
weird, it's a
much
crazy
rather
trade-off, right? Like,
100%. I'd much rather go grind and put it all on the table and see where I can bring this thing rather than, step down to that, which is, again, there's nothing wrong with how anybody wants to
no,
live
it's
their life.
fine. But for people like
But
us,
yeah.
I squirm when I think about like doing that for the rest of my life. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Dude, so as we start to wind down now, I want to get into some ending questions. I'm very curious to see who inspires you.
Yeah. That's an interesting one. I kind of got thrown into this mountain world without anybody I looked up to, besides my uncles. Both my Uncle John and Uncle Steve were the only like real mountain athletes that I knew. And so like growing up, I looked up to them as athletes and like who they were and like what they did in the mountains and or just playing football and whatever it may be. And so it took a few years because I didn't know what any of this shit was 5 or 6 years ago. Like I'm brand new to this stuff still, I would say. And since then it's grown, and like people like Julian Carr who absolutely are and have pushed human limits in the ski world. Huge inspiration, good friend, love the guy, and like
Love Julian.
he is probably my first like real mountain inspiration that I met in real life, and like that's why it became an inspiration because I saw him and I saw what he was doing with what his sport and just his community, and it inspired me. And so beyond that, I would say Jason obviously is a huge inspiration just because of his the way he lives his life, his mindset around everything, and like being a person that truly is a helper that wants to help people. I think that inspires me to want to be a helper. And then if you look at like Erin, I mean, she's a groundbreaking woman, and the FKT mountain world, coming from a non-athletic background, kind of just chasing her dream as well and making it happen on really high levels. And so these are the people. And it's the same with Tyler. It's like those are the people that really inspire me. And I think it's safe to say that like there's a lot of other people that do inspire me, and I watch people's stuff and I look at Instagram and I see what people are doing, but I'd like to keep my community close and like the people that inspire me close. So like typically the person that inspires me is the person that's right next to me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. That's a beautiful answer. Dude, you're getting ready for a race or you're getting ready for a hard effort. What song are you listening to? Like what kind of music? What kind of music are you into?
I shuffle it all around the board, man, but I think one of the ones like the OG pump up would be like it has to be Kanye, Can't Tell Me Nothing.
Oh, dude, that's a solid. Yeah. That's a good song. All right.
He's kind of a crazy dude, but
it's a wild
boy.
It's
a solid one. Just can't. Yeah. Yeah, man. When I'm going on really hard or like shorter efforts, I will pop in the rap and really just dig deep in the rap. But if it's like a longer thing, I like My Morning Jacket and Pink Floyd. I'll let those kind of like simmer and just kind of enjoy it all. Kind of a big mix of everything.
All right, dude. So now we're going to get into a weird question. I always ask everybody one weird one. It's usually a mix of aliens, Bigfoot, or AI or something like that. Dude, I'm very curious to see, like, do you believe in aliens? Like, what's your take on the aliens?
I was hoping this was the one you're going to ask me. Yes, absolutely. I just find it really hard to believe that there's not any other life anywhere else. And depending on who you ask, I mean, there could be aliens in the ocean. I mean, how deep do you want to go with it? It's funny because I actually like grew up in high school reading and like kind of like studying conspiracy theories. So like some people may think if they actually learn about some of the things that I think or I've thought and like looked into, they would probably think I'm a nut job. But
I feel the same way about myself.
Yeah. So absolutely, do I think aliens are real? And I think honestly, they probably live amongst us and we just don't realize it. It could be a really long conversation around this.
Oh yeah, dude, open it up. Let's. I'm just so curious because like, dude, I'm a big believer, man. Like, especially like I don't know, you're out more in the wilderness than I am. Like, you ever like look up in the sky and see some crazy shit? Like, have you ever seen a UFO?
It's hard to say. I can't say I've ever seen one, and I feel like if you want to see aliens, you have to like say it out loud and think it that you want to see them, otherwise they're not going to show up. I think it's one of those like spiritual things, like you have to like truly right. It's like I think if I were to go out to some of these crazy ass places in the middle of nowhere and like sit there and like meditate on it and like believe like they're gonna come and show me, like I think that it would probably happen, but I've never done that and it's kind of scary. So no, it's an interesting thing. Like I think they're out there. I think they're again amongst us. I think that they're flying around, but I have never seen anything, and I know that like my brother has, and he's got some crazy stories with aliens / whatever you want to call them. He calls them demons. So
okay, all right.
He's had like a personal encounter, and yeah, I mean, as much as I like think I would want to have these encounters, I don't really think I do. Because from his experience, it seems really, really scary. And, everybody can take that the way they want. But again, I'm happy to talk about this, and I'm happy to have him come talk about it. But
I'll talk to him. I've talked to anybody about this stuff. Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a weird thing. It's a real. It's got to be real. I mean, man, I remember one time I was reading conspiracies back in the day, and I don't know if you like read into Mars very much, but there was one like theory around how humans were once, civilized on Mars, and then whatever happened, it got into a nuclear war. It just, became a wasteland, and they all moved to Earth or whatever it may be. So that could be a.
I believe it, man. I was just listening to a podcast recently, and like, actually, no, it was dude, there's like a whole thing with Elon now that like Elon wants to fund, like he's already funding like descending like a specific rover to Mars because they found something that like very much looks, this sounds crazy, but like very much, I don't think it looks like a pyramid. I gotta look it up after this.
Yeah.
I need a Jamie. I need someone next to me to like bring this shit up so I can like have it on the screen. But anyway,
right.
Long story short, like they found something that looks like a building, more or less, right? So it's like all right, well, that holds weight a little bit. Like if you found something that like crazy, it's very possible that that there's either that could be where we came from, that could be where another extraterrestrial group of people, group of whatever beings came from. I tend to think, just because space is so big and vast, like from the physics perspective, like I think of it as like, well, maybe there are things that like live on different planets, but like even more so, I think a lot of the stuff we see might be like from a different dimension. I think the way we perceive reality is only in, so many dimensions, and there's so many more beyond that. So it's like one of those weird things that's like the shit we see, like maybe it's coming across the sky or in the ocean or whatever, like could be,
absolutely.
We're just accessing that plane of existence by being able to like just tap into that dimension, which is fucking crazy.
It is crazy. And I absolutely believe that too. And it's crazy to think. I mean, we have what is it, 3D? How many more dimensions are there? So it's a crazy thing to think about. And yeah, I think it's a big piece of it. When you're able to access different dimensions, whether that's through meditation or psychedelics or whatever you want to do, it's I think there's definitely ways to see. And if you want to see, you will.
Dude, have you ever heard this whole thing? And I don't want to drag this on all night, but like I've heard like from so many people that have taken DMT. Now I'm talking about illicit drug use on the podcast. Here we go. But like people that use DMT, like they all see, and I've heard this about people that take mushrooms too. Like you see the machine elves, which it's like a very common thing that like everybody sees, and it's like, are you tapping into like another plane of existence with that? Like what is that? Because everybody seems to see the same group of characters there. It's fucking wild, dude.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever done that stuff, and I don't know if I want to talk about it here.
I was gonna say I can't confirm if I have or I haven't, but that said,
right, I'm right there with you.
That's right.
It's a crazy thing, and I believe it. I'm a believer in that stuff, and whether it's good or bad, I don't know, but like, I've read a lot of stories and I've read a lot of trip reports about that kind of stuff, and it's pretty cool. I mean,
it is.
It's pretty crazy and interesting stuff. Yeah.
Wild, dude. Well, listen, brother, I don't want to keep you here all night. When you come back to Colorado, we got to hang out. We got to talk about
let's do it. Let's do it.
Dude, I'm wishing you the best of luck on your upcoming race, and projects throughout the spring and summer. Definitely won't be the last time you and I talk. We're going to have many conversations going forward, but I think this is a great starting point to be able to help tell your story thus far. And I really appreciate you coming on to let me help tell your story. Thank you.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you having me. It was good talking to you finally, and I'm sure we'll do it again. So yeah, absolutely, man. I appreciate you as well, James.
Yeah, brother. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, dude.
What'd you guys think? Oh man, what an amazing episode. Just so many great and just like really cool inside baseball stories there from all of Chris's like just legendary records and some of the crazy things that he's done. Yeah, what a fan. I'm such a fan of this guy. Before you guys get going, hop on Instagram, give him a follow. If you don't already follow Chris, give him a follow at Chris J Fish. You can also find him on his website. That's at chrisjfish.com as well. Guys, if you enjoy this episode, send him some DMs. Let him know what you guys think. And just send him some words of encouragement. Chris has got a 100-mile race up his sleeve in the next month or so that he's going to be taking down. So it'll be cool to follow along as he makes that attempt. in the next month or so. So, guys, if you enjoyed this episode, please give us a 5-star rating and review on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. That's how we can continue to get these great episodes out to the world and to help tell the stories of these amazing athletes. Very last but not least, hop on ultimatedirection.com. The race and ultra vests are out now in 2 color wheels, the white and blue and the black and green. Absolutely sick. I'm so excited that these have finally dropped. You can get them on ultimatedirection.com and use code SteepStuffPod for 25% off. These vests are going to change the way you view the brand. They are so exciting. Just like, I don't know, just in my opinion, some of the best vests on the market right now. Everything has been thought through. Just amazing pieces of technology. I'll be wearing them at a bunch of my races and training runs as well. Like, just awesome pieces of equipment. So get them at ultimatedirection.com and use code SteepStuffPod for 25% off your cart. Thanks, guys.